Our protagonist's story begins in a classroom, where he sits silently, ignoring his classmates' meaningless chatter. Suddenly the door opens, and a guy with an arrogant smile enters the room. All of his friends greet him, and a female student asks about his sales. The arrogant guy thinks it should be obvious as he reveals his sales of 48 million won in just a month. Her jaw drops, and his friends hope he's ready to throw a party. The guy lets them know they're all going to Doom Perignon this time. His friends sound excited, but the guy becomes serious out of nowhere and approaches the protagonist. He slams Park's head on the table and believes he has made things clear. The guy continues slamming Park's head and reminds him to buy next time or else he's going to get it. Park takes everything silently and holds himself back. The ones watching advise the arrogant bully to stop, or else he might get punished for it. He reminds them the teachers are literal scums. All he needs to throw is a little bribe. He forgets about the consequences and keeps beating the crap out of our protagonist. Park gives him a cold look, but the guy doesn't take the hint and keeps provoking our boy. The bully knows he can't turn to the police either because he's completely broke. He continues to annoy the protagonist, whose face shows clear frustration. Park can never forget what happened 2 years ago. Apparently, a high school gang suddenly gained the whole nation's attention. It was known as Nexus. Our boy was the one who stood against the gang's leader, Cheonsu Kim, all by himself. Just when Park thought things were finally over, his situation took a sudden turn when the gang's lackeys filed a suit against him. He couldn't win against fake yet consistent evidence, and in the end, he lost the case. His dad had to sacrifice his precious gym in order to somehow manage the settlement money. Park felt genuine guilt and frustration. He made a promise to never use his fists again. His father forgave him and assured him not to cry about it. Park was devastated. He learned he was nothing without money. As the protagonist heads back home, 3 dudes recognize he's Hanjun Park, the same guy who started a fight with the famous gang. One of them approaches the protagonist. The bald musclehead reveals his ring and drags Park to a sketchy alley. He starts giving Park a beating for no reason. The guy calls him wimpy, but Park holds himself back and doesn't fight. The musclehead finds it hard to believe that such a wuss stood against Nexus. He keeps kicking Park and brings up his father as well. Our boy grabs his foot and gives him a cold, terrifying stare. The musclehead becomes puzzled, but Park apologizes instantly and lets go of him. The bullies sweat anxiously, and one of them questions why his whole body stopped functioning. He finds it hard to believe, but admits Park's glare did that to him. The musclehead doesn't take the hint and grabs a piece of wood. He loses his patience and breaks the wood on Park's face. The guy continues until he's satisfied and begins leaving with his gang after feeling bored. A mysterious man appears and wonders what Park is trying to pull. The man questions if he's just scared to pay settlement. He believes Park doesn't need to hold himself back after such a beating. The mysterious man already knows Park is completely broke, so he opens his bag and throws out a huge stack of cash. He calls it enough to cover for a lawyer, but thinks it's more fun if the protagonist destroys the musclehead himself and pays for the settlement later. He questions if 3 minutes are enough to finish off the scumbags. Park hears him out and wonders who he is. The mysterious man reveals he just wishes to destroy Cheonsu Kim's life. He's willing to share more but orders Park to take care of the large audience first. The baldy notices stacks of money on the ground. He and his lackeys approach Park again. The musclehead begins blabbering again, but our boy beats the living soul out of him with just one blow. The lackeys are stunned as they see their leader in a pathetic state. With an evil look, Park tells the mysterious guy all he needs is 4 seconds. He approaches the lackeys and finally stops holding back. The bullies try defending themselves, but he instantly destroys them with a few blows. He finishes his revenge and believes they can finally talk. They sit somewhere else in a tall building. This rich dude is quite bewildered to see that Park does not recognize him at all. So, he pulls out his phone and reveals he is the famous Junu Oh, the youngest self-made tycoon in the country. The man begins bragging but apologizes and decides to control himself. He reveals what kind of life Cheonsu Kim has right now. He's a model student who's setting an example for his classmates, the price of the Korean gaming scene. Junuo calls it complete bullshit and feels frustrated. He reveals Cheonsu, with a crappy past, still controls the back alleys as a side gig, while his victim Park got owned and now lives a shitty life, like he's some beggar. Junu is confident he can do anything with money, but the reason he's holding back is because he wishes to destroy the scumbag's life in his own way, a crappy, low, and disgusting manner. He wants to push Cheonsu and his goons to complete rock bottom. From today, Junu is willing to take care of every expense the protagonist has, from hunting down the scumbag to pursuing an easier life. He's even ready to cover the gym business Park's father lost. Junu hopes our boy lends him his fists. That's his only wish. Park asks why he's after Cheonsu. Junu's expression changes instantly. He believes it's not necessary but assures Park he will slowly learn everything. The next day, Park walks towards his class confidently, as he knows there's no reason to worry about money anymore. He swings open the door and hears the Nexus small fry threatening everyone again. Mogul orders everyone to spend $300 on his new line again. Park and Junu have a common enemy. Junu has ordered Park to clean the Nexus small fries from his school first. Mogul decides to check the order history and reminds the students he won't go easy this time. His friends laugh and enjoy the moment while some students become terrified. Park approaches Mogul and wonders if money is everything in this world. He prepares his fists and admits everything people desire comes from money. With a single punch, Park destroys Mogul, shocking everyone in the class. He finally accepts the fact that money is status itself. Mogul remembers he feared nothing. He could beat anyone, but then he met the protagonist one day. When he witnessed Park throw hands, he realized he stood zero chance against such a powerful guy. It was as if Park was not human. He fought like a wild beast. But he got unlucky when he met Cheon-soo. The gang leader destroyed Park with lawsuits, took everything away, and dropped him on his knees. That's when Mogul finally learned money is amazing. Money can solve anything. He began working on his online store and forced his classmates to buy his crap. As soon as he got rich, Park was nothing more than a tamed beast. Mogul finally reached the top of the food chain using his money. As he gets punched the crap out of him in the present time, Mogul wonders why he's getting destroyed now. The guy tries to defend himself, but Park gives him zero chances and continues wrecking his ass. Mogul finds it unbelievable. He feels humiliated as he notices the whole class watching his ass get beaten up. Park slams him on the door. Mogul gets up in frustration and tries to speak, but notices the terrifying look on Park's face. He realizes he's done for, so Mogul pathetically calls his friend for help. The fatty is too terrified of Park, so he decides to just completely ignore everything. Mogul begins feeling hopeless. He pulls out his phone for evidence and reminds Park he's completely broke, but our boy ignores his words and continues kicking his face. Mogul finally gets what he deserves as he starts feeling the extreme pain. The guy hopes he can survive after this. He somehow manages to open the door and tries running away to at least save his life. The guy calms himself down and tries thinking rationally. Park follows his pathetic ass with the intent to kill. Mogul believes he won't win against a gym rat. He remembers he has the perfect guy for this job. Mogul opens the gym's door and starts begging Seung to save his life. Park catches up, so Mogul pathetically hides behind the gym rat and orders him to somehow beat Park and stop him. The gym rat thinks about it and demands $2 million for the job. Mogul agrees to it, as he has nowhere else to run. Seung drops the weights and apologizes in advance since he needs money for college preparation. Park understands he's desperate, so he pulls out a stack of money from his jacket and advises the musclehead to avoid straining his body. He orders Seung to stay out of it, and the guy listens with no objection. Mogul screams in frustration, but Park grabs the scumbag and throws him out the window. Mogul falls in front of a teacher. The old guy questions what's happening. He notices it's Park's doing, so the teacher starts screaming at him. Once school is over, they both get called to his office. The teacher doesn't let this one slide. He reminds Park what happened 2 years ago, and makes it clear he won't stop his expulsion a second time. Mogul sits confidently as the teacher talks about Park's poor father. The protagonist loses his patience and hits Mogul with a soul-crushing punch. The teacher becomes frustrated and tries to stop Park, but he continues to beat the crap out of Mogul. The bully finally learns his lesson. A man enters the room and advises Park to stop now. The teacher questions who he is. The mysterious man introduces himself as Byung-gwon Kim, associate lawyer at KR. The teacher recognizes the guy but wonders why he's here. At Junu's building, Park questions how he pulled it off. He remembers the principal started licking his boots after finishing his conversation with the lawyer. The scumbag bully got expelled instantly as well. Junu calls it easy and believes the guy paid for his shitty behavior. Park is curious about the principal. Junu reveals taking care of him was child's play. The old man has been skulking around a lot lately, so Junu just used the evidence to shut him up for good. Junu shares he's still not done with the principal yet. He's just using the old man to send the bully to juvenile. Once that's over, he's planning on putting the principal behind bars as well. He's determined to not let anyone off the hook. He stops talking about himself and asks if Park is feeling a bit lighter. The protagonist is still not satisfied. Junu understands it's still too early to get a thanks from Park. He realizes he should be the one thanking Park. Junu shows his gratitude in advance. Mogul is unable to control his frustration anymore. He's determined to take his revenge on Park and end his life. The next day, he begins walking and reaches a sketchy destination. A man peeks out of the door and asks who it is. Mogul reveals he's here to check the progress. The guy calls his arrival perfect and lets him in, sharing that Jinsong is here. Mogul notices a few men beating the gym rat with bats. The leader allows him to come in. He's Jinsong Huang. The gym rat notices Mogul and finally understands he's behind all of this. They shut his mouth and continue beating him with bats. The leader orders his lackeys to take away the trashy gym rat as their client is here. Jinsong wonders why he came in person this time. Mogul reveals he has another request. Jinsong calls him adorable and gets fired up. Mogul shares he is willing to pay 10 million won for it. The yellow-haired lackey is surprised. He advises his leader to accept the request and asks Mogul to explain more. Jinsong smashes his lackey's head with a bat and orders him to keep his mouth shut. He believes Mogul is after a big fish this time. The scumbag shares he wants Hanjun Park dead. Jinsong gives him a cold stare and orders him to leave, as he is not dumb enough to stand someone like Park for 10 million. Mogul shares he's willing to pay 10 million up front, and once they finish the job, he will hand over another 10 million. Jinsong gets excited and accepts the deal. Juju enters a house surrounded by tall buildings and covered by police tape. He announces his arrival and apologizes for not visiting more often. He brings fried chicken with him and wonders why it's so small. Junu suddenly recalls his father's fried chicken. He starts craving it and remembers the last time he got to eat his dad's amazing fried chicken was 2 years ago. Junu's expression changes. He becomes enraged and remembers everything like it happened yesterday. He becomes silent for a few seconds but then decides to leave. He announces he won't be able to swing by any day soon because of his busy schedule, as he's finally getting near his goal. Junu leaves the house and sees his lawyer waiting for him. The guy shares Mogul is making a move again. He asks for instructions, but Junu reminds him he doesn't want to play a fair game anymore. The lawyer grins as he decides to follow his employer's orders. At night, Park's dad gets a call from the big gym. He accepts the offer and learns his salary is amazing too. He decides to go there tomorrow, and as the call gets cut, Park's dad screams in excitement and shares the good news. He wonders how they suddenly got lucky and believes they might even get rich soon. Park gets up for the gym. His father advises him to return on time as they're about to eat like kings for once. Park notices the genuine smile on his father's face. He feels happy about it, and as he leaves his house, he gets a call and learns Mogul is cooking something. Junu explains he hired some runaway students, but they won't be a big issue to deal with. Junu advises him to just give a call if he's in trouble, but the protagonist lets him know there's no need for that. Junu gets confused, so he clarifies that the wannabe gangsters are already here. Park questions who they are. He notices a van approaching him at full speed, ready to end his life. The protagonist instantly charges towards it and tries to somehow save himself. Park falls to the ground and gets a head injury. The thugs laugh at him as they all wonder if he's some sort of masochist. Jinsong is astonished. He calls it a smart thing to do as he notices the protagonist getting back up. Park becomes enraged and gets ready to end everyone. The men grab their weapons and get ready to face him. Despite not fighting for ages, Jinsong realizes Park still has strength and agility. He believes he can win since the guy is injured. The people living in the nearby apartment notice the noise and wonder what's going on. The thug smirks and orders his men to get inside the van. He hopes he gets to see Park again and leaves. Our boy doesn't let it slide. He starts charging toward the van with full speed. The thugs laugh at him and think he's crazy, but he proves them wrong by getting closer. The thugs become terrified. Park jumps onto the van and breaks the mirror. He grabs one of the lackeys and lets the van leave. The others ask their boss if they should turn around for their partner, but Jinsong orders them to leave him behind, shocking everyone. The guy who fell off tries getting up. Park orders him to reveal where they're headed. The guy jokes around and doesn't take things seriously, so the protagonist destroys his face with a punch. He gives the pathetic guy another chance, but the lackey keeps his mouth shut. Park starts punching the crap out of him. Inside the sketchy building, the thugs celebrate their victory. Their leader orders them to hold back and not overdrink. Mogul stays silent with a face filled with frustration. He speaks up and calls everything bullshit. The guy doesn't understand why they're celebrating. He hopes they make his money worth it, and wonders what they'll do if Park finds their crappy hideout. The leader understands his words but doubts Park will appear. He brings up a Korean saying about hunting a bear. The guy breaks his glass and reminds Mogul they are dealing with a tiger. There's no such thing as a tiger hunting knife. Jinsong grabs Mogul's face and scares him with the broken glass. He doubts any knives would work but remembers their ancestors used to hunt tigers by unleashing multiple Pungsan dogs after it. Tigers like their personal space, but the dogs will keep tormenting the tiger until exhaustion catches up to it. Jinsong plans on pulling the same trick for the protagonist. He believes his men will destroy his peace and keep driving him crazy until he drops dead. Suddenly, someone almost breaks the door. The whole gang gets terrified as they notice the iron door's dent. Jinsong orders his lackey to check. The guy feels annoyed, but as he peeks out, he finds Park standing outside with clear killing intent. They're all shocked to see he found their hideout so quickly, but their leader orders them to chill out, as Park can't break through an iron door. They all assume he left after a few minutes. A lackey thinks he might be scared, but suddenly his expression changes as he sees an arm outside the balcony. Park jumps in and breaks the balcony window. The leader finds it hard to believe since they're on the 3rd floor. Park wastes no time and starts beating the thugs one by one. He's able to overpower the whole gang all by himself. Park destroys a few men and turns back to teach the rest of the gang a lesson. As they all face Park, Mogul becomes terrified but observes Jinsong is keeping his shit together. He remembers the thugs took out Seong with no effort, so he tries to assure himself and believes the leader is still hiding some special moves or tactics. He begins hoping and thinks the gang might be able to beat Park. Jinsong orders his men to attack. They all charge in with weapons, but Park remains unfazed. He grabs one by the leg and slams him into the wall. Another thug tries attacking from behind, but Park beats the crap out of him and pins him down. The yellow-haired lackey breaks a bat on Park's head and thinks he did some damage, but Park quickly proves the guy wrong by throwing him out the third floor's window. The pathetic weakling hits the ground. A biker girl comes out of nowhere and approaches the lackey. His consciousness starts to fade away, but the cute girl asks if Park is up there fighting. He happily tells her she is right and tries spouting more bullshit, so she just hits the guy with her helmet and leaves. The biker girl informs Junu about Park's situation. Junu sounds concerned, but the dumb girl ignores his words and starts blabbering about some cute purses she saw online. She demands money for any further information, which annoys Junu, but he sends the cash to satisfy her first. She gives him Park's location. Inside the apartment, Jinsong comes face to face with Park as he is the only one left. Mogul lies on the side with a pathetic beat-up face. The leader admits they couldn't do shit against Park. He assumes he got spared because Park needs something from him. The protagonist calls him wrong and tries choking him. He just wanted to save the worst one for last. Jinsong realizes he's done for. The guy uses his bat but gets slammed onto the ground. Park begins wrecking his face. As he's punching the leader, a boy with tears in his eyes stops Park. He begs and calls it unfair, saying he's already suffering enough and can't handle the expenses as an orphan. Park hears his complaints, but the orphan starts losing his mind as he questions what he did to deserve all of this. Junu finally appears and looks at the horrible mess Park made. The orphan questions who he is and starts trembling as he assumes Junu is the one who ordered Park to do all this. Junu introduces himself and shares that he is willing to pay for the damage. The crybaby finally shuts up and demands 10 million won. Junu makes him happy by giving him 50 million instead. Jinsong, in a pathetic state, calls our boy a literal monster, saying no human can be this strong. He realizes he had lost from the beginning, so he makes a smart move and tries saving himself by jumping off the building. He almost succeeds, but Park grabs his collar and tries pulling him up, as he's still not done with the guy. Jinsong knows he's getting killed if he doesn't somehow escape, so the guy pulls out his knife to scare him. Park lets him go, and the scumbag pathetically falls to the ground from the third floor. He somehow manages to get up and run away despite having severe injuries. Junu calls it a strong will to live. A beat-up lackey begins laughing and calls Park dumb as he's just gotten himself stuck in a huge mess. He reminds them about Jinsong's father and reveals the guy is the chairman of PJ, the shipping behemoth. The lackey believes his leader's father will make the two of them vanish into thin air. Junu smiles wickedly as he learns about this. Jinsong finally reaches his house and finds his father, Haryong, the chairman of PJ Shipping, becoming concerned seeing his son's injuries. Jinsong requests his dad to eliminate two guys for him. Haryong reminds him he can't turn back and asks why he's after them. Jinsong shares the story, but his father doesn't take him seriously. He advises his son to keep his chin up and always look the person in the eyes. Otherwise, they won't fulfill his requests. With a scary expression, Haryong orders him to beg like his life depends on it. Jinsong listens and determinedly says he wants to see the two of them drop dead. The father finally gets satisfied and calls his men, ordering them to prepare 2 barrels as he wants to hunt down some young daredevils. The gang reaches a construction site. Junu finds it pathetic and stupid to involve a guerrilla troop in a high school feud. Haryong calls the guy cocky and wonders why he wants to die so badly. Junu moves forward and reveals no one wants to die, so he came here with a plan. He asks Haryong to guess it. The guy becomes confused, but his jaw instantly drops as he recognizes Junu. He becomes terrified and suddenly receives a call. Haryong almost pisses his pants when he learns the shipping deal has been cancelled by the OJ affiliates on Junu's personal order. The young tycoon laughs menacingly as he realizes his plan worked. Haryong instantly drops to his knees and starts begging. His men don't understand anything, but he orders them to just shut up. Since he's finally behaving properly, Junu orders him to get rid of his apes first. The gang of men leaves without wasting a second. Haryong begins begging again, as the deal means everything to him. He doubts his company can last without their partnership with OJ. Junu doesn't mind fixing the mess, but he wants to avoid getting his company's personal image destroyed. He's not in the mood to partner up with a gang boss's father, as he wants to maintain a perfect image. Haryong promises he'll make sure his son never sets foot in Korea again. Jinsong tries to speak in between, but his father punches him in the face and begins beating the crap out of him. Junu laughs at the sight but orders the guy to stop, as it is enough. He believes sending the kid abroad sounds more like a treat, so he's not satisfied with it. He shares his own idea to discipline the scumbag. Haryong is willing to do anything for his company, so Junwoo tells him Jin Song's mess cost him 50 million today, which is a huge sum for some. He wants the kid to work it off, but Haryong doubts his son can pay up that much money. Junwoo smirks wickedly and recalls their family business is sea farming. Jin Song notices where he's getting at and finally realizes he's totally done for. The guy has no other choice, so he begins fishing on his dad's sea farming boat. Inside a huge building, Park sits with Junwoo and believes he's like a villain. Junwoo admits he's not playing fair, but advises the protagonist to just ignore the matters that can be solved with money. He doesn't want our boy to get injured for no reason. Park tries putting up a tough act, but the girl from yesterday appears and points out the bruises on his neck. Junwoo shares she's their new partner, who's willing to help bring down Nexus. She's a celebrity acting as an informant for them. The girl feels embarrassed hearing such a label. Her name is Seoyeon Choi, and she feels a bit shocked as she assumed Park looked like a trucker after hearing so much about him. She calls our boy a dapper, but Junwoo reminds her not to get so close. She gives him a middle finger and lets him know she'll take a trucker instead. Junwoo suddenly recalls her stupid behavior the last time they called. She ignores his words and orders him to talk about business. Junwoo feels a bit irritated but remains calm and reveals they're here to make new plans for the next move. She believes there's no need for a plan, as Park can just whoop everyone into shape with ease. He reminds her Nexus has grown so rapidly, and Park alone can't do shit against such a huge army. He decides to begin with their combat force. The guy throws a file on the table and reveals someone might join them soon. The protagonist recognizes the high school name Junwoo is talking about and assumes it is Donghyun Kim. Junwoo calls him correct and reminds him it's the same guy who stood against Nexus alongside Park. Park remembers something else. Junwoo already knows the guy injured his knee during the first fight, which ruined his whole life. Junwoo selfishly makes it clear that he still needs the guy. Park becomes silent, but Junwoo assures him to chill out as they're all professionals. He believes it's a good opportunity for Park to make up with his old friend and clean the Nexus-infested school as well. At Dongyeon High, the gang members hold a meeting, and one of them shares Mogul has been sent to juvenile. The bullying and forced purchases became the cause, so they can't expect any efforts from his side. The members laugh at the pathetic scumbag, but one of them believes they should teach the guy who did this to him a lesson at least, since Mogul was still their gang's member. The informant continues to share that the one who did all this was Hanjun Park. The high school's number one, Gyeongchol, is a bit shocked to learn this. They remember the protagonist promised to lay low. As they're discussing the matter, a student barges in and announces Hanjun Park has transferred to their school. The whole gang, including Gyeongchol, is surprised to learn this. Inside his new class, the protagonist introduces himself and reveals he's here to destroy everyone. The whole class stares at him. The teacher laughs it off and shows him where he can sit. Park walks towards his seat and sits down with Jo. The guy begins talking and says he was advised not to mess with Park, but he's getting the urge to still fight. The guy clarifies he just transferred last year himself and has been hearing about Park ever since. He just wants to see if Park lives up to his expectations. The guy requests a fair fight, but Park completely ignores him. He gets annoyed and slaps Park to make things more clear for him. Our boy smashes his head and destroys him in one blow, shocking the whole class. At the batting cage, Choi still calls it a bad decision to add Dongyeon to their team. She knows many strong men for this job and believes Junwoo just pities Park's friend because of the knee injury. He calls her wrong and reveals that Dongyeon is probably the most tenacious man he knows. People underestimate the guy because of his small build, but they end up missing his unyielding spirit, which he used against Nexus. He believes people with such spirits can break, but they never bend. She still doubts he can be useful with a broken knee. He believes the guy might fail to retain his vigor, but he's definitely going to develop a whole new edge. She becomes silent and thinks he should write a book instead. At the school, Park walks through the hallway with thugs all around him. He finally finds his old pal. A guy comes in and kicks Dongyeon for taking more than 5 minutes to bring the snacks. He thinks his money was a total waste, so he starts beating the crap out of the guy to teach him a lesson. The other bullies think beating isn't effective anymore, but the scumbag believes he can make Dongyeon more scared of him to make him faster. So he keeps punching Park's old friend. Park watches everything with a cold expression. Inside Junwoo's office, Choi finally agrees to add Dongyeon to their team, but doubts Park is the type to make up with an old friend. She believes it would be much faster if they just used money for it, but Junwoo reveals he's someone who doesn't care about money. He reminds her that the guy fought against Nexus just because Hanjun did. That's the only reason. He finds it completely stupid, but from what he's learned so far, a friend's enemy is his enemy. Dongyeon can't see a friend getting hit. That's his real nature. At the school, Dongyeon finally catches a break and sits down to chill. Park approaches him and greets the guy. Dongyeon already knows why Park transferred. He doubts it's possible since the gang has grown extremely powerful. They don't only have men but financial power as well, so it's already over. Park makes it clear that he's aiming to win this time. Dongyeon calls it delusional, as his determination didn't stop him from ending up in such a pathetic state. Park gets silent but challenges him to just watch. The leader observes them from the school window and calls it wimpy, seeing the guy team up with Donghyun. He orders his men to get ready to take the protagonist down. At the hospital, the doctor is happy that Donghyun is going easy on himself, but he reminds the boy that he might lose his mobility forever if he keeps waiting. He advises him to see a surgeon, even if it's expensive. Donghyun becomes silent, and as he leaves, Kyungchul approaches him and questions what the doctor said. Donghyun doesn't understand why he's here. The guy shares he's just here to check on how the former number one is doing. He mentions he saw the secret meeting Donghyun had with Park, so he came to confirm if he had recovered. He's determined to destroy Park's friend again, but Donghyun reminds him there's no chance he can be beaten alone if he's recovered. Kyungchul gets irritated and kicks the guy. He smirks and reminds Donghyun that he's no longer a sidekick and won't tolerate anything funny. Kyungchul brings up what happened last time and calls loyalty bullshit, as it almost crippled Donghyun. The guy points out that Kyungchul betrayed them and joined the shitty gang. He calls it wicked, but Kyungchul laughs and lets him think whatever, as he doesn't want to be a loyal, wimpy cripple. He doubts the guy can keep his loyalty up this time. At the school, Park sits silently as an announcement begins. Kyungchul introduces himself and tells the whole school that the famous Hanjun Park, who stood against Nexus 2 years ago, is here to break it. He calls it bullshit and warns Park to get ready. The whole class gets up and begins preparing themselves to fight the protagonist. Kyungchul admits he can't do anything in a one-on-one, but he doesn't have interest in playing fair. An army of students walks towards Park's class with weapons in their hands as the leader orders his men to get ready, saying they're about to teach Park a lesson. A few men fly out of the classroom, completely injured. The ones in the hallway get terrified and find out Park has already taken care of everyone. They're shocked to see the whole class has been defeated already. The protagonist comes out with an evil expression and invites everyone to come attack him. The huge army of students charges at once, but Park faces all of them without hesitation. As he beats the crap out of the whole gang, Donghyun tries ignoring everything and holds himself back. The fight continues. The whole school tries defeating the protagonist, but he's able to face everyone alone. The men call him crazy and realize he wasn't kidding about destroying them. They try putting him in a lock. Park struggles and ends up getting caught. A few men hold him down and begin punching him, but he's able to free himself in mere seconds. Park wrecks everyone around him. He continues beating the crap out of them, and one by one takes care of the whole school. Park barely manages to survive, and as he heads back inside, he sees more men waiting for him. They're disappointed to see he's already tired, as the show hasn't even started yet. They all charge toward the exhausted tiger while Donghyun sits inside his classroom and tries to just ignore everything. He doubts Park can win, so his efforts will be completely useless. Choi appears and assumes Park is probably at his limits. She tries to shame Donghyun for ignoring his friend. The girl introduces herself as Park's co-worker. Donghyun feels ashamed but tells her he's too weak to fight. She smiles and shares she's already aware. She reveals the protagonist already had an idea that things would turn out this way. Even though he was told to just run away, he didn't. She tells Donghyun the reason he's still fighting is because Park wants to prove something to him. The guy suddenly remembers his friend's words and becomes silent. She assures him he's not going to regret anything, which makes Donghyun think about his decision again. Inside the hallway, Park finishes taking care of all the men. He's completely out of breath after facing such a huge army, but Kyungchul appears with more men. He praises Park for how strong he is, but doubts he can keep this up against the top 10 strongest students of the school. Kyungchul makes it clear for Park, but our boy remains determined and takes a fighting stance once again. The men charge at him to attack, but before their punch connects, Donghyun hits one with a wiper and hopes Park stops taking the spotlight every time. The thugs call him a sneaky rat, but Kyungchul orders them to calm down as they can just take both of them down together. They all attack Donghyun as well, but he easily takes down one of them. Another comes forward and grabs him, but despite the pain, he beats the guy up and continues to fight. Park keeps throwing punches as well, and together they become unstoppable. The men realize they're in real trouble and question why their targets are so strong. As they face everyone, the protagonist apologizes. Donghyun shares that he used to hate Park for whatever went down, but he admits he just needed to put the blame on someone. Park smiles as he hears this. The leader jumps in to ruin the moment, and as he tries attacking both of them, they dodge. Donghyun shares that he wishes to handle the guy himself. Park and his friend run towards a door. He calls them wimps and chases after them, but Park grabs him and throws him inside the room. Donghyun locks it from the inside so he can fight Kyungchul with no interference. Kyungchul finds it stupid. Donghyun admits it might seem like that for a friendless guy like him. The man becomes angry and charges forward to attack, but Donghyun hits him hard and pushes him back. Kyungchul remains persistent and grabs Donghyun's legs. He picks the guy up and smashes him onto the glass door, breaking it. He succeeds in breaking Donghyun's weapon and believes he can't do anything without it. Donghyun removes his shirt and ties it onto his fist. Gyongchul calls it funny, but as they both exchange blows, Donghyun uses the shirt to grab the thug by his face and pin him onto the ground. He starts smashing the guy's face, but Gyongchul grabs his leg and drags him down as well. He's finally able to free himself. Gyongchul makes it clear that he's not what he used to be as he squeezes Donghyun's injured leg. The guy screams in pain and lets Gyongchul go. As the leader finally gets up, he catches his breath and becomes determined to someday take his revenge. Donghyun orders him to stop, which surprises Gyongchul, as he thought the guy had finally learned his lesson. Park's friend gets up despite the pain, but Gyongchul begins punching the crap out of him until he finally drops. Gyongchul becomes tired and tries leaving. Donghyun orders him to wait once more and begins collecting the glass shards. Gyongchul feels frustrated, so he charges in without thinking. Park's friend uses this opportunity to throw the shards and destroy the guy with an uppercut. He continues to beat Gyongchul. The guy doesn't expect anyone to understand, but still reveals he's going to feel embarrassed later in front of Park if he doesn't win this fight. Gyongchul begins losing his vision after taking punches from the guy persistently. Donghyun remembers everything he went through and lands the last blow to knock out the musclehead. His leg hurts, but Donghyun ignores it and walks out to find out his friend actually won. Park grabs his injured friend and begins laughing as they both leave the school. The chairman of the board, Dong Yeon, gets shocked as he lays eyes on the school. The guy learns Park was behind all of this. He looks at the state of the whole school and finds it hard to believe all this happened over a single guy. He laughs and orders his men to bring him Min. As he comes face to face with the guy, Min reveals they don't interfere in their students' problems, but don't mind handling the grown-up conversation themselves. Dong Yeon learns who's behind Park but still calls it unfair, as he lives in a law-governed country. He calls it unfair, but Min drops a few suitcases and believes the guy will feel satisfied. Dong Yeon smirks wickedly. He orders his men to check and makes it clear that nothing besides the yellow stacks can satisfy him now. The lackey opens it, and they all find a few textbooks inside. Dong wonders what he's looking at, so Min orders him to check the headlines. He finds information about his gang recruiting DY graduates, and the headline also has evidence of DY stealing subsidies, committing tax fraud, and much more. Min warns him to back off, otherwise he's ready to dig deeper. Dong becomes enraged and threatens the guy, reminding him of the situation he's in right now. He wonders why Min is still sitting unfazed. The Four Eyes tells him things won't stop with his death, and if KR and DY fight each other, he doubts Dong will win. Adding the death threat on top is enough reason to start a deathmatch. Dong holds himself back and orders his men to pull back their weapons. He goes straight to the point and asks what Min wants. The Four Eyes demands the whole school, which surprises Dong. At the hospital, Choi finds it hard to believe that the protagonist stood against the whole school and still came out unscathed. Park begins answering her, but the doctor appears and informs them he doesn't know how the guy has been holding up. However, he looks relieved as he informs them the surgery was a total success. The doctor is sure Donghyun will recover from this. Park begins smiling as she hears this news. Somewhere at a fancy restaurant, Junwoo sits patiently near a woman, thanking Cheonsu Kim for his precious time. She begins taking his interview. Junwoo reads the news about the school and begins smiling in satisfaction. He hears the woman leave after the interview is over. Cheonsu recognizes Junwoo and understands why his team schedule got cancelled. He believes Junwoo is the one behind the magazine interview. Cheonsu is surprised that an important guy like Junwoo is trying to find him. He feels good about it, but Junwoo smirks and orders him to cut the bullshit. He sits down and reminds Cheonsu about himself. The gang leader smiles and assures him he remembers everything, but things have changed. He praises the guy for reaching such heights and believes he is nothing more than a gamer. Cheonsu shows his admiration for the guy, but Junwoo sees through his bullshit and makes it clear he won't move on so easily. Junwoo smiles wickedly and reveals he destroyed Donghyun High. Cheonsu remains calm and starts leaving as he has nothing more to say. He tries going for a handshake, but Junwoo ignores him and doesn't show any interest. Junwoo hopes he can keep up his crappy smile the next time they meet. Cheonsu gives him a smile again, but as he leaves the restaurant, his expression shows frustration. Junwoo feels a bit relieved. He was unsure if he still cared about the grudge and thought he might end up getting intimidated, but now he realizes he was stressing for nothing, as Cheonsu's face still makes him angry. Inside a car, Cheonsu's driver wonders if he's going to take any action. The guy calls the school fight an invitation and reveals he's definitely going to fight back. Cheonsu believes this battle will be the biggest in Korean history. At a fancy building, Tae-soo Choi walks into a room full of men. He questions why he got called for an urgent meeting, despite the others sharing their frustration about it as well. Cheongyu thinks they shouldn't be so negative. As all the leaders gather for the urgent meeting, Tae-soo learns they will be talking about Hanjin Park. He thought the guy had been lying low after getting his life destroyed by the gang, and the others remember the same thing. Dong Cheon wonders who he is, as he doesn't know what they're talking about. Mungil Lee laughs at his confusion but guesses it's normal for a crappy noob like him. The guy mocks Dongchan but begins explaining that Park is a huge pain for the whole gang. He used to be the leader of a small district. Nexus had control over the whole surrounding area and a few provinces, but Park didn't let go of his district, which was humiliating for the gang. The bigger issue was that more and more people got inspired after learning about Park, so Nexus had to deal with more enemies. The gang poured everything into destroying whoever stood in their way, but it didn't go perfectly, which is the reason they're gathered here. He shares that the unpredictable happened. They fought against Park with all their forces but still lost every battle. Soon, Nexus came to the point of breaking up because of a single guy. Dongqian finds it hard to believe. Moongil thinks he'll understand once he sees the guy with his own eyes. He calls Park a literal beast. Dongqian begins laughing and calls everyone a wimp, as they lost against a single guy. The leaders become enraged, and Moongil warns him to shut up or else he'll get reminded of his place. Jihyuk stops the guy and calls Dongqian's words correct. Taisu agrees as well but believes it's old now. He thinks they're overreacting, but Cheongyu orders them to remain cautious. He knows it doesn't mean anything to them, but to someone like Park, their carelessness might become a huge opportunity. Cheonsu finally arrives and greets everyone. He apologizes for the urgent call and decides to treat them to dinner later. Cheonsu reveals the protagonist made his move, so a deathmatch is unavoidable. He's already decided it but wanted to have a face-to-face meeting for such a matter. Taisu doesn't mind his decision, but thinks there's no reason for a war. He thinks they're overreacting over a crappy school. Cheonsu's expressions terrify the guy, so he instantly shuts up. He questions if he's really making a big deal out of it, but Insunam speaks up and calls his decision correct. He's willing to handle the matter himself. Cheonsu smiles and asks if he's sure about it. He reveals money won't be useful anymore, as their enemy has a strong backer this time, so he's going to need a lot of preparation. Insu touches the scar on his face and coldly lets him know he's been prepared ever since he got the scar. Cheonsu begins smiling and decides to let him handle it. He asks if the others have any objections. All the leaders agree with him. Dongcheon feels excited since Park wrecked them last time. Cheonsu officially orders the Incheon chapter's leaders to take care of it and finishes the meeting. Insu begins laughing maliciously as he finally gets the chance to take his revenge. During nighttime, a gang of bikers gathers at a mysterious place. Insu reveals their opportunity to destroy Hunjin Park has finally arrived. A fat, ugly biker moves forward and asks his boss if he's finally allowed to kill the scumbag. Junu takes Park to the same burnt-up house and believes it is unfair that our boy knows nothing about his past, how he earned his wealth, or why he hates Cheonsu so much. He invites Park inside and says he's willing to share everything. As they both sit down, Junu reveals that the money he has actually belongs to the owner of this house. He explains what happened 2 years ago and starts by mentioning his childhood friend named Hyok, who was extremely close with Junu, a friend who he could call his family. As they both sat together at his friend's house, the guy showed Junu that he had come up with a stock trading AI, a software that could analyze important information and generate a recovery plan as well. Junu learned it could predict the market just by studying the outcome. He was interested in Hyok's idea, but then Park lost to Nexus, which changed everything. The gang began controlling his district, and Cheonsu's goons started bullying Junu. But he's the type to not bend easily against petty scumbags, so he fought back with everything he had. Hyok was the same way, so they both faced the gang despite being horrible at fighting. Junu believed the gang might let them off the hook after getting tired. But he was completely wrong, as the gang burned down his friend's house for revenge. He confronted the goons about it, but they called his friend unlucky and silenced him forever through straight-up violence. He became helpless, and the fire inside him slowly began to fade away. He didn't see any hope in life and decided to just kill himself. He thought about wiping his existence from the world, so he started with his friend's laptop. He decided to just liquidate the account, but his expression instantly changed as he laid eyes on the account's progress. He couldn't believe it at first, but the money didn't spark anything as he didn't care anymore. He wished his friend could witness the fruits of his own invention. Junu felt extreme anger, but it gave him a reason to not end his life. It's his friend's money, so he wants to spend it destroying Cheonsu and his gang. Park wonders why he's sharing so much, and Junu becomes straightforward and reveals it's just to gaslight the protagonist so he never gives up on chasing Nexus. Later that night, Junu calls Choi and tells her he shared his crappy story with Park. She finds it funny and wonders if he's trying to make a friend. Junu feels embarrassed and orders her to shut up. Choi becomes serious and reminds him that the Incheon chapter scumbags are coming after him this time. She hopes he remains cautious since his enemies are literal muscleheads who don't use their brains. Junu calls her correct as he realizes his car is surrounded. He knows it's them since no one with a brain would pull such crap in the middle of the road. The bikers throw buckets of paint to stop the car from escaping. The driver becomes frustrated, so he instructs Junu to hold tight as he tries to somehow escape. Choi hears the commotion and questions what's happening. Junwoo passes out as he hits his head because of the ambush. Insu gets a call from Choi and assumes she's his girlfriend, so he orders her to inform Park that he's waiting patiently at the JQ distribution center with a cocky attitude. She tries to warn him, but the crappy guy ends the call, and she feels frustrated after being ridiculed. Elsewhere, Park walks back home and recalls his conversation with Junwoo. He calls it exaggerated, as he was never planning on giving up. Choi appears on her bike and asks him to quickly hop on. She fills him in about the situation. Junwoo finally wakes up at the distribution center and notices he's surrounded by Incheon goons. The fat gorilla, who's the number 2 of Incheon, notices Junwoo woke up. He thinks about knocking Junwoo out again, but Insu stops him, as they're just holding the guy as bait for Park. Junwoo recognizes who they are and starts laughing out loud. He calls them stupid for just straight-up kidnapping the chairman of a leading company without hesitation. He praises their crappy plan and feels like hiring them for it, but Junwoo advises Insu to have some self-awareness. He reminds the scumbag that they're the weakest goons and clearly remembers Insu pathetically kneeling down and groveling in front of Park for mercy just 2 years ago. Junwoo doubts they can hold their ground against Park. The gorilla lackey becomes angry, but Insu stops him and moves forward to handle it himself. Insu believes Junwoo knows a little about his chapter but guesses he doesn't know only one wimp knelt down, not the entire chapter. Junwoo smiles and asks him to go easy on his brother, since he knelt down to save Insu's pathetic ass. The gorilla goon becomes angry and warns him to shut his crap, but Junwoo keeps speaking with a cocky attitude. He loses his patience and tries punching Junwoo, but a lackey enters and informs Insu that Park is approaching. Insu smirks maliciously and orders Banjung to save his anger for the real threat. Junwoo praises Park for his timing. Banjung smacks Junwoo into a wall and begins walking toward the entrance in rage. Junwoo learns the loser has no patience. Insu doesn't give a crap about Park and remains confident, since the old leader knelt, not him. He challenges Junwoo to just watch, as the gang is nothing like before. Choi and Park get chased by a bunch of bikers. She tries to throw them off but gets frustrated as they keep chasing. Park informs her they stop chasing. The girl becomes confused, but Park orders her to look forward. Choi quickly stops her bike as they both find Banjung and his goons blocking the way. The gorilla comes face to face with the protagonist but holds himself back and orders them to follow him. He wants to kill the guy instantly, but his gang has some rules. Park follows the gorilla and begins heading toward the distribution center. Choi wonders why Banjung looks so big. She starts teasing the guy, but he completely ignores her. She keeps mocking him for his huge size, so he finally loses his patience and orders her to shut up. She finds it hard to control her curiosity and hopes he can answer a question of hers. She reminds him about his wimpy leader who groveled and promised he wouldn't fight again. She cheekily asks why they're still trying to hunt Park. The guy loses his control and tries to attack her, but Park comes forward and calls the girl right. Banjung stops holding back and decides to ignore the orders. He moves forward to whoop Park's ass, but the protagonist stands unfazed. Banjung was an ultra-strapping baby who became huge after hitting puberty. People call him the man-wrecker, but for the first time in his life he takes flight as the protagonist throws him away with a single kick. The fatty hits the ground headfirst, and his goons get surprised, getting their guards up. The protagonist enters the distribution center confidently with Choi. The goons realize they're in big trouble, so they take formation to jump in at once. Choi mocks them for ganging up. Junwoo orders the protagonist to quickly free him as his legs have gone numb. Insu removes his jacket and warms up, as he wants to handle Park all by himself. He greets the guy with a cocky attitude. Park recognizes he's Mansu's brother. Insu becomes serious and throws a punch. Despite not getting hit, Park's cheek starts bleeding. Insu shares how much he desired to have this fight. He doesn't waste a single second and throws a punch. Park tries dodging but still gets hit, which shocks him. Insu announces that today he's going to take revenge for the dishonor his gang suffered 2 years ago. Park ignores his words and begins attacking, but his kicks and punches don't connect. Insu is able to dodge all attacks easily. Park tries to hold his ground against the guy, but Insu connects a straight punch to his face and mocks him for being slow. The protagonist steps back and feels frustrated, but Insu motivates him to keep fighting as he wants to let out a lot more rage. Insu orders him to stand up with a cold expression. After the former leader got his ass whooped, Insu took 0 breaks and tirelessly worked hard because of the humiliation he felt. He felt shitty after learning his brother, the strongest in Incheon, had knelt down in front of Park without even fighting. Insu quit boxing because he wanted to become a real fighter. After that, Insu put himself through hell and destroyed 27 schools and multiple gangs just to get stronger to fight against the protagonist. He feels disappointed and questions why Park can't even hold his ground anymore. He's still angry about the embarrassment they faced 2 years ago. The guy continues to destroy Park and begins cornering him, which shocks Choi. She doubts he can win this battle. Junwoo orders her to be patient. He did proper research before hiring Park and was shocked to learn that Park has no martial arts background besides fitness training. The protagonist faced Nexus with brute strength and adaptability. Junu believes Park will win once he sees through Insu's style, but the real issue is that Insu already knows this. As the guy continues to destroy Park, Junu knows a bare-knuckle punch can inflict crazy damage. A real boxer can even tear apart human skin with it. Junu predicts Insu is planning on taking advantage of his strength to slowly destroy Park and finish him at the end with a critical hit. The protagonist gathers his strength and tries attacking, but Insu shuts him down and orders him to fight back like a real man. Insu attacks, but Park finally dodges it and grabs his legs. Insu calls him stupid for acting delusional. Park tries throwing his body weight onto Insu so he falls back, but the guy sees through it and smiles, as he isn't a normal boxer. He hits Park with his knee and lets everyone know he is a street fighter. He grabs Park and throws him toward a few boxes. The goons become excited as they think it's their victory, but Insu gets up and takes his stance. He calls what he did round 1 and doubts Park will go down so easily. He's confident the damage he did will make it hard for Park to see and balance himself. Insu calls it his victory and moves forward for a critical blow, but Park dodges it, putting a smile on Junu's face. He finally adapts and hits Insu with a powerful punch. Insu finds it hard to believe Park was able to see through him. He tries fighting back, but Park destroys his face with another punch and continues to wreck the guy. Junu is aware of Insu's scary speed, but he calls Park a literal beast and doubts anyone can overpower him in a fight with just speed. Choi still doesn't understand why Park kept eating punches with no effort to dodge. Junu explains that Park was trying to read his opponent with his body. The protagonist was able to learn everything about Insu's fighting style. Insu barely dodges Park's kick and becomes frustrated as Park can see through every move he pulls. Insu gets his face wrecked by Park, wondering why he trained tirelessly just to be read by Park like an open book. He realizes the protagonist is a real genius. He still doesn't give up and dodges Park's attack to move forward and crush him for good. Insu keeps throwing fast punches to deal more damage. He begins moving faster and challenges Park to keep up with him. Junu begins smiling and calls it a checkmate as he sees Park wrecking Insu. The protagonist calls him slow and destroys him with an uppercut. The villain suddenly remembers his brother wanted to protect the people he loved, even if he had to throw his pride away for it. He believed the most miserable man would be the one who failed at protecting his loved ones. Park keeps whooping Insu, but he doesn't back down and suddenly remembers his brother groveled in front of Park. He called it bullshit and mocked his gutless brother for kneeling down. Insu moved forward to protect Inchan's name all by himself but got wrecked. In the present, Insu keeps standing determinedly. His men become concerned, and one of them asks why Banjung isn't doing anything. Insu starts losing his consciousness. He finally understands why his brother knelt down. The guy accepts that no man can fight against a beast like Park. He feels terrified and wishes he could run away but knows he has the responsibility of his whole gang on his shoulders. Banjung and the other goons charge towards Park to kill him. The gorilla orders everyone to destroy Park and assures he's willing to take responsibility, but Insu screams at them to stop. He falls down to his knees and announces that Park has won. Insu felt humiliated when the guy he used to call his boss fell down on his knees and groveled, but now he finally understands how heavy it was for his brother to kneel down with no one taking his side. He learns the one weighing his brother down was not Park, but his own men. Banjung becomes frustrated and orders his leader to get up. They all shame him for kneeling down and order the poor guy to stand back up, but Insu accepts defeat. Junu moves forward and asks the goons to use their stupid brains. He tells them Insu is doing this to protect their sorry asses. He wonders if they're low enough to call it a victory if they gang up on Park. He calls them a bunch of fools and lets them know real men succeed when they're able to protect what they love. The goons feel ashamed of themselves. Junu asks Insu to look up. He spits on his fist and hits Insu for kidnapping him. Junu feels good and thinks he deserves gratitude for not sending them straight to jail. He calls it even and brings up the debt their gang has to pay Nexus. He knows the goons also need to pay the huge sum their old leader took from the shitty gang for the sake of his goons' families. Junu shocks them by saying he paid everything off. They don't understand what he means. As he leaves the place, Insu asks why he's showing such kindness. Junu shares a selfish reason but reminds them it's not for free. He asks them to check their phones for a message and shares he paid for their whole tuition, so he hopes they study as hard as they can and someday work like hell to pay him back. He's aware they've been trying to pay off the debt using the money they earned doing honest jobs. Junu knows they've been doing everything in their power. He reveals the only reason he's doing this is because of the grit Insu has despite all the hardships. Choi mocks him for being so nice. He gets embarrassed and orders her to shut up. Insu bows down and shows his gratitude. He promises he's definitely going to pay every penny back someday. Junu orders him to keep his crap shut and begins leaving. Insu apologizes to his men and turns back to bow down as he ruined their honor again. He determinedly announces such humiliation won't happen again, and from this day forward, they have nothing to do with Nexus. He asks if they're willing to side with him for a better future. The gang yells out they will. The next day, Junu praises his team as they were able to deal with Incheon. Park wonders what's wrong with Choi. She receives 40,000 from Junu and begins laughing as she feels amazing. The girl hopes he keeps getting kidnapped every day. Junu feels insulted, but she apologizes and shares she can't contain her happiness anymore. Choi notices the protagonist has huge shoulders. She believes he will look amazing in a better outfit and asks if he's free this weekend. With a cheeky smile, Choi requests Park to go out shopping with her. At the mall, Choi starts laughing as she forces the protagonist to wear a stupid outfit. Seeing his angry expressions, she decides to have him try something else. Choi forces him to dress as a beat-up rock star. She takes a picture but notices his terrifying expressions and backs down. Junu advises her to get her act together. Choi decides to stop goofing around, so she asks the protagonist to wear something casual. He comes out after changing and looks amazing. Choi starts blushing but hides it and starts picking something else. A few men notice Choi and remember she's the insta-babe they've seen before. The blondie decides to approach, and his friends think he doesn't have a chance. But the guy points out she's hanging around such goons, so she probably has low standards. He wants to give her a taste of a real man. The guy calls influencers overrated fantasy toys. His friend starts glazing over him, so the guy confidently approaches Choi and tries to hit on her. He invites her on a date, but she questions who he even is. The stupid blondie doesn't take the hint, so he tries to convince Choi and puts his hand on her shoulder. Choi loses her patience, slaps him, and orders him to stay back. She lets him know she already heard his chatter earlier. She humiliates the guy in public, but he doesn't take the rejection well and tries punching her to teach Choi a lesson. The protagonist intervenes and smashes the crap out of him. The blondie's friend appears, but Park shows him no mercy and destroys him as well. The guy begins begging for mercy, crying and trying to convince Park to let him go. Choi encourages him even more and enjoys the show. A worker appears and threatens to call the police if they don't stop. Choi confirms they'll stop, but the lady mentions they need to pay for the damage as well. Both Park and Choi start staring at Junu for the money. He becomes frustrated, but tries to control himself. At a casino, Tae-soo learns Incheon got their ass whooped. He shares that he didn't expect much from those fools. He praises Junu for the cocky attitude as he learns the guy covered Incheon's debts. Tae-soo gambles against a lady who looks frustrated. He assures his leader not to care about Park as they're ready to begin fighting. Tae-soo cuts the call and focuses on the game. He smiles wickedly and orders the woman to check her card. She anxiously flips it and realizes she lost again. Tae-soo informs her she has reached her debt limit of 120 million after losing this round. He calls it a good game and orders his staff to take her away for her new life. She begs them to stop, and after a bit of crying, the woman agrees to do something. Junu stops leaving and hears her confirm she's willing to follow his orders. He begins grinning maliciously and asks if she's really sure about doing this to a close friend. The woman has no choice, so she agrees. He hands her Choi's pictures and hopes she doesn't go back on her word. At the hospital, the nurse finds Donghyun performing leg presses. She forces him to quickly get off as he still hasn't fully recovered. Junu greets the guy and asks if his recovery is progressing properly. Donghyun shows his gratitude and promises he'll pay back every single penny. But Junu assures him not to worry, and even lets Donghyun choose for himself. The guy is thankful, but makes it clear that he's definitely going to win against Nexus. He's doing it for himself only. Junu smiles wickedly and hopes he gets better quickly. At the huge building, Junu informs Park about his interaction. The protagonist feels glad. Junu goes back to business and believes things are going just as they predicted. He expects their next enemy to be the guy who loaned Incheon the money, Tae-soo and his Gyeonggi chapter. Junu doubts Park knows about the guy, so he reveals Tae-soo is the financial foundation of the gang, a greedy scumbag who makes money through loan sharking. Junu wants to prioritize destroying his chapter first. Junu wants Park to meet someone, so they both reach a random warehouse. Junu shows gratitude for the cooperation and begins talking to an anxious weirdo. The guy hopes they can protect him after this. After some convincing, he reveals Tae-soo is a literal Satan. He begins sharing his story and tells them he used to get a lot of compliments daily. His friends thought he could become a great influencer, and he liked their words because he wanted to become one himself. But no matter how hard he tried, the reality was he couldn't get famous, until one day he got invited to a party held by celebs with thousands of followers. He thought it was an opportunity sent by God, so he began going to their parties. The celebs he met supported him, and in a few days, his following finally increased. He started feeling amazing, but it was temporary as his new celebrity friends began showing their true faces. He got dragged to a casino with them, and despite his warnings, they kept gambling. Soon he got kicked out of the gang as well. It didn't take long for his followers to drop back down, and no matter what he tried, he couldn't regain it. He became desperate and tried going back to his celebrity gang to recover his followers. He started gambling as well, and he instantly became addicted, losing everything he had. He knew he was done for if he didn't earn it back. That's when he met Tae-soo Choi. The guy gave him a huge loan, and he took it without thinking twice because he was a complete idiot. Now he's stuck trying to pay it back. The thing that makes him angry is the fact that Tae-soo is the same person who forced him into such a shitty addiction. He's aware it's his fault, which is why he's going crazy. He regrets his past actions. Junwoo gets up with a serious face and assures the guy it's not his fault. He got used because of his dreams by those scumbags. Junwoo promises they're going to destroy Tae-soo soon. The next day, the green-haired weirdo barges into the casino and orders the men to bring him some chips. He remembers Junwoo ordering him to enter a Nexus casino with Park and play a little. The guy becomes frustrated, thinking he wouldn't have to be involved. But Junwoo thought that's exactly what they'd be doing. He determinedly announces that he's going to take down all gambling parlors under Nexus, which shocks the green-haired weirdo. The casino workers ask what he has to offer. He remembers Junwoo guaranteed his safety, so the guy confidently shows the bag filled with stacks. Junwoo allowed him to gamble his money, and he can even keep whatever he wins from it. The weirdo orders the casino employees to bring him the chips. They think he's stupid but guide him toward the table. Earlier that day, he didn't understand how this plan was supposed to work, so Junwoo explained he's going to win everything to make them go bankrupt. Junwoo was confident, as he knew a way to win every gamble. Usually the dealers lose a few times, but from what Junwoo learned about the casino under Nexus, he believed they were created in a way to guarantee the dealer's victory every single time, which means they're somehow cheating. The green-haired weirdo knew this already but wondered how he could win against such people. Junwoo shared a plan that could use the cheating to their advantage. At the casino, the guy goes all in, which amazes the dealer. He decides to play along and tries cheating. Park yells that he got caught red-handed and shatters the window to come inside. The dealer tries to shut him up, but Park jumps onto him and destroys his face with a single blow. The weirdo thinks he won since they're cheating, so he guesses the money is his, but Junwoo already knew the casino wouldn't hand it over without a fight. A few men appear to take care of the whole mess. They threaten the green-haired guy, but Park is there to finish them off. They charge at him, but he easily overpowers everyone and humbles them for good. The weirdo begins his second game, and Park watches closely to catch the dealers cheating. He beats another dealer as he spots the guy cheating. Junwoo thinks they're using violence this time, but believes it's not unfair since he's not trying to scam anyone. At the headquarters of Tae-soo's chapter, a man fills him in on everything, which frustrates the guy. He admits Junwoo is playing an impressive game while sitting in front of Choi. She's disappointed in her friend, even though the other girl tries apologizing. Tae-soo says sorry for his rudeness as well and hopes she hears him out, as he has an opportunity that might be beneficial. Choi becomes curious, so the guy continues speaking and requests information about Junwoo's plans. He assures her he's willing to pay 3 times what Junwoo is giving her. The girl agrees instantly and seals the deal, which shocks the guy. She sends him the account number, but the guy remains cautious and lets her know if she lies, he's not going to show any kind of mercy. She laughs it off and calls herself a horrible liar. Choi receives the payment, so she begins explaining what they're hiding. Choi starts a countdown, confusing Tae-soo. She announces the plan to destroy his headquarters has begun, shocking him again. The door breaks open and Park walks in like a beast. The green-haired weirdo follows him inside for his sweet revenge. The men rush towards Park to beat him up, but he instantly beats them up with no effort. Tae-soo begins feeling hopeless and realizes no plan of his can ever help him win against such a beast. Tae-soo's top men ask him if killing is allowed. He grants them permission, so they smile and rip off their clothes for a serious fight. Tae-soo accepts he can't do anything in this situation, so he starts running as fast as he can. He knows the men he hired are just scarecrows with no real strength. The 2 men get destroyed by Park. Tae-soo tries calming himself down. He knows he doesn't have the power, but he was always able to somehow manage with money and influence. He believes he's capable of defeating Park. The protagonist finishes cleaning the whole headquarters. Choi disappointingly informs him that the sucker ran away. The next day, Junwoo learns about the rat who ran away. He praises Park and orders him to stay ready. Junwoo becomes a bit frustrated, as he's aware it won't be ready. He expects Tae-soo will take revenge with a lousy plan. Somewhere in a sketchy building, Tae-soo's goon learns he somehow managed to escape. He calls it a wise choice, as it's stupid to fight such a beast. His goon orders something and assures the leader he doesn't need to worry. Tae-soo orders him to post it, so the guy uploads a 2 billion bounty on Park's head. Tae-soo's real influence and power actually come from online gambling. He has a following of 87,000 users. Men across Korea notice the bounty, but some of them know it might be a dangerous job if the bounty is so huge. Tae-soo knew people might back down because of this, so he introduced a special system that rewards people for small efforts as well. Students begin leaving the school to go after Park for the bounty. Many people start aiming to kill Park. Tae-soo's amazing plan begins rolling. As Park walks home, a girl calls him but apologizes while making an excuse. Park doesn't think about it, but the cheeky girl pulls out a knife and tries attacking from behind. Park is easily able to see through her. He observes she's not a part of Nexus, The girl gets surprised and mentions money. Another one attacks him with a bat, but Park easily stops the guy and smashes his head with the bat. He orders the girl to spit out everything, so she gets terrified and reveals an event is happening on the site she uses. Park learns Tae-soo Choi is behind this. He becomes enraged but notices more ordinary people coming his way. Tae-soo's minion starts getting reports. He learns the people are doing their best. At first the guy was hesitant about Tae-soo's incentive system, but now he admits it's working perfectly. Tae-soo knows he might go broke because of his system, but he's already expecting a favorable outcome. He reveals he chose the gambling market because it destroys greedy men. If a rich guy was offered the same money, he would look down on Tae-soo. But losers who got their lives wrecked because of gambling won't hesitate at all. Such people are willing to lose their sanity for money. Park pushes back the wave of bounty hunters. He notices a kid and steps back to dodge. A car barges into the street and gets stuck, but the killers find a way to attack. Park deals with them and gets a call from Junwoo, who makes sure Park is okay. He learned about it, so he's sending men for Park. But our stubborn protagonist declines his offer and orders him to just somehow reveal Tae-soo's location. He can handle the rest. Junwoo thinks he's careless, so the guy orders his security team to enter. Park deals with his killers one by one. A guy tries killing him for his daughter's hospital bills, but Park smashes his head without hesitation and jumps up to grab something he can hang to. He quickly makes a run for it and leaves, despite getting jumped by everyone. The protagonist saves himself by entering a random store, but he gets shocked to see a huge army of men waiting inside. He realizes they lured him in, which means they're from Nexus. Park feels glad he doesn't have to hold back anymore. Park begins beating all of them. No matter how many charge forward, the protagonist remains unstoppable. He destroys a guy, shocking the other goons. Park keeps his guard up and receives a call from Junwoo, who reveals the scumbag's location. He decides to clean the place quickly so he can chase Tae-soo, but the men around him become terrified and back down. Tae-soo watches everything through a camera. He begins smiling as he assumes he has cornered Park, since our boy only wiped out a fraction of his goons. Another gang shows up to face Park. Tae-soo's lackey suggests they should deal with Junwoo as well while they're at it. Tae-soo praises his evil mind and promotes him instantly. The goon tries hacking Junwoo's camera as well, but as soon as he takes action, Junwoo starts appearing on all his screens. Tae-soo assumes this is part of his goon's plan, but the pathetic scumbag lets him know they're totally cooked. Tae-soo becomes confused, so Junwoo clarifies it was a trap. He laughs menacingly, which makes the leader terrified. His goon tries his best, but the broadcast doesn't turn off since Junwoo and his men already hacked into his crappy security. Junwoo calls their plan a complete failure and shares that he's just teaching them a lesson. The guy changes the bounty on Park and turns Tae-soo into a target. The guy becomes terrified, but Junwoo doesn't hold back and asks him to have fun with an evil smile. Nexus goons get the notification. They realize they've lost, so the whole gang quickly retreats. Tae-soo becomes hopeless, and as he suddenly hears a knock on the door, he orders his crappy lackey to take the money out of his safe, as they're both about to go underground for a while. The men begin chasing Tae-soo, but he keeps a cool head and tries prioritizing his own life over money. He's confident a new gambling website won't be hard to make, so he can maintain his wealth later if he lives. Suddenly, Tae-soo sees his goon getting completely wrecked. He falls onto Tae-soo and stops him. The leader becomes terrified as he notices Park has caught up. The protagonist wonders why he's in such a hurry, with a scary expression. The pathetic guy realizes his whole body is trembling in fear. Tae-soo tries bluffing and warns the protagonist to stay back with his crappy excuses, but Park smashes his face with a kick. He doesn't let go of this opportunity and tries teaching Tae-soo a lesson, but the rat dodges and makes a run for it. Park doesn't let him slide so easily. Tae-soo warns him again. He reminds Park about what happened the last time and pathetically continues to convince our boy, but Park continues to smash his face. The guy tries using money, but Park doesn't hold back one bit. Tae-soo offers billions, but Park stomps his face and wrecks him. The pathetic scumbag crawls away and tries reasoning with Park. He throws all the money he has at Park but realizes there's no point since Park is acting like an animal. The protagonist becomes enraged hearing this, but finally stops as he sees the guy begging for his life pathetically. Park wishes he could teach the scumbag a lesson but steps back to let the gambling addicts handle it from here. A huge wave of men charges towards Tae-soo in hopes of 2 billion. Despite his words, they smash his head to keep him shut and begin trying to end his life for 2 billion won. Tae-soo screams in pain as he gets his shit wrecked by gambling slaves. The bounty expires, and Junwoo's lawyer informs him that Tae-soo only has a few weeks in ward before his life ends. The lawyer assures him he's going to take care of everything. Junwoo praises his amazing work and gets up as he wonders if this much is enough to make Cheon-soo Kim lose his head. At the hospital, Cheon-soo Kim pays his lackey a visit. With a fake grin on his face, he wonders why Tae-soo's trying to ignore him. Tae-soo finally responds and assures him he's okay. The terrifying guy mentions money, which scares Taesu. Cheonsu squeezes his hand. The guy screams in pain, but Cheonsu assures him not to worry, as he believes Taesu won't give up. He orders Taesu to fix his mistake. A nurse congratulates Donghyun on his recovery and hopes he doesn't fight anyone. The guy grins and says he'll give it a thought. As he leaves the hospital, he notices a few Nexus lackeys bullying a crybaby. The guys demand money and try ripping the poor student's front teeth as compensation instead of letting it go. Donghyun moves forward to solve the issue. As the goons bully the student, they notice the redhead warming up. They try scaring him off, but Donghyun replies with a powerful kick that sends the goon flying. The other scumbags charge at him as they announce they're from Nexus, but Donghyun wrecks them both with no effort. He feels a bit off and learns a full recovery won't happen anytime soon. He thinks about increasing his weights and leaves. The goon gets up and finally recognizes he was dealing with Donghyun. The guy wonders if both him and Park are back in their prime again. Donghyun and Park were famous nationwide for their incredible strength. People used to show great interest in their stories of standing against Nexus. Now that Nexus has lost 2 chapters because of them, the 2 legends are suddenly gaining a lot of attention. Their videos are being posted online for entertainment. Some become terrified, but some feel more hopeful seeing these videos. Cheonsu enters a martial arts building. He ignores everything and walks straight towards the rooftop. A guy greets him and learns it's not just a rumor. Cheonsu confirms Hanjin Park is back in the game. The guy gets up as he assumes Cheonsu came because he can't defeat the beast alone. Moonyoung Baek becomes serious and hears Cheonsu out. The Nexus leader reveals he needs someone equally strong to deal with Park. Moonyoung reminds him about the last time. Cheonsu confirms he remembers it. 2 years ago, Moonyoung got used by the guy like a joke, and now he has the confidence to come back crawling with his crappy request. Cheonsu makes a crappy excuse and assures the guy he's going to be rewarded. Cheonsu offers him whatever he wishes for. Moonyoung flexes his bicep as he hears this, but the guy suddenly becomes serious and asks if Cheonsu is willing to sacrifice his throne for it. They both go silent for a second. Cheonsu asks if Moonyoung can handle Nexus with a terrifying expression. The musclehead realizes his leader still has the scary aura despite all that gaming crap. He takes back his words, knowing it's not a request but an order, so he assures Cheonsu he'll quickly take action. Moonyoung is confident he can finish Park like last time, so he lets Cheonsu know he expects a satisfying reward for it. Later that night, Moonyoung recalls the interaction and believes Cheonsu doesn't trust him one bit. The guy predicts his captain is planning on destroying both of them at once. Moonyoung's goon finds it hard to make a decision as he starts getting a bad feeling. Moonyoung wonders what he's up to and orders his man to kill the pathetic guy if he's not revealing anything. But his left-hand man, Juyong, gets a bad feeling about it. He hates the victim's face and has learned everything he needed, but still feels weird. Moonyoung orders him to finish the job and hears his right-hand man, Jongyong Lee, dying to know how the interaction went earlier. He assumes Cheonsu is after Park, so the guy asks if he should let their boys know. Moonyoung suddenly smiles, seeing his man's confidence. He realizes he was chickening out for no reason, and since he's finally getting a chance to reunite with his old homies, the guy becomes confident, but he's aware Park won't drop dead easily. Moonyoung kills the victim, giving his men a good show. He announces he's coming after Cheonsu once he's done dealing with Park. At Junu's office, Choi films herself while congratulating Donghyun on his recovery. Junu gets mad and orders her to cut the bullcrap. She calls it a discharge party, but he begins talking about business. Choi throws a stupid tantrum, annoying Junu even more. He thought their only objective was revenge, but she starts shaming him for it. Donghyun observes everything and wonders why Park is hanging out with such fools. The protagonist answers it's because they have the same enemy. Junu suddenly gets a call and learns Incheon got wrecked. Insu checks up on his gorilla friend and becomes frustrated as he sees Banjung's shitty condition. Junu tries to calm him down and wonders what happened. Insu believes they should stay out of it, but he becomes determined to take revenge for his gorilla homie. As the guy leaves, Banjung begins speaking and requests Park's help. He acted like he was asleep just to stop Insu from fighting, as he knows his crackhead friend will jump in with no hesitation. Junu is aware Nexus is behind this, but he wonders who exactly did it. Banjung reveals Moonyoung is behind all of this. Donghyun recognizes the bruise on his leg and confirms it's the work of the same guy who destroyed his knee the last time. Cheonsu meets someone and thanks him for the support. He gives the guy credit for their success and believes he can proceed with his plan now. He confirms all high schoolers around the whole nation will soon be playing the game his company created until his game comes to the top. Cheonsu is aiming to increase the share prices by a huge margin. The other guy still doubts him, but Cheonsu confidently confirms he'll make it possible. The man decides to trust Cheonsu with his plan. Inside the elevator, a guy with his identity completely hidden believes the games are not that great, but he has already taken action. Cheonsu smiles and calls him a trustworthy lackey. The mysterious man, known as Lion Kim, skips the bullcrap and starts questioning about Park. He believes a counterattack using Moonyong is a bit stupid, as the guy might create too many problems. Cheonsu gives him a weird example and just orders the guy to sit back and enjoy watching them fight. Lion Kim gets his example and leaves the question. At the gym, Donghyun goes all out and squats heavy weight to build strength. Choi ignores the real workouts and focuses only on taking pictures. She suggests they should make a video together. Donghyun sees through her and asks what's wrong. With a cheeky expression, Choi starts mentioning Moonyong and requests Donghyun to reveal what happened in the past. He calls the guy a complete genius and explains he has only seen 3 all his life. The first 2 are Park and Cheonsu, and the last one is Moonyong. He shares that Park and he conquered their district 2 years ago. No one had the guts to stand against them. Even Nexus was afraid. But then, a few months later, Donghyun learned a guy from the US transferred to his school and destroyed everyone on the first day. It was hard for him to believe. But soon Moonyong changed schools again to enter their district. He changed many things and took over nearby schools to make them fight each other. The losers became his target, and Moonyong was doing this just for giggles. He was a crappy human, but a few days later, even Donghyun's school became his target. He got invited to settle everything at a park nearby, but after waiting for hours, Donghyun got played by Moonyong and his cheap tricks. The scumbag disappeared for a while, but one day, a kid got beaten to a pulp again. Moonyong was trying to wreck the guy little by little through crappy tricks. Donghyun had become frustrated, but then one day he finally got the chance to confront the scumbag. That's how his struggle against the crappy guy began. Moonyong was disappointed as he saw the school's head looked like a twink, but Donghyun quickly proved him wrong by throwing the first kick. Moonyong was surprised, but he dodged it with ease. The redhead questioned why he had played around all this time if he was wishing to die this badly. Donghyun continued attacking, but Moonyong remained unscathed, and revealed he pulled such tricks just to piss him off. The guy finally fought back, and with just a punch, he almost shattered Donghyun's ribs. The redhead became more pissed off, but it didn't help as he got hit by a powerful punch. He realized Moonyong was on par with the protagonist. If Park was a beast, then the scumbag was a viper who would get into his enemies' heads before crushing them in a fight. As things continued, Donghyun started feeling hopeless, and doubted he could get his vengeance as he got beaten to a pulp. But he remained calm and tried getting his shit together. The redhead stopped the viper and grabbed him with a leg lock. He destroyed Moonyong's face with a head smash and finally freed himself. He admitted he had been taking Moonyong lightly, but now had woken up thanks to the pain he went through. Moonyong decided to get serious as well, and as the fight continued, both of them destroyed each other and got knocked out at once. The goons around them were shocked, but the 2 unyielding beasts got back up to settle it for good. Suddenly, they all heard police sirens, so everyone ran to save themselves. Moonyong admitted Donghyun was no ordinary fighter. He hoped to settle their business some other time and warned Donghyun to get ready, as he was soon about to be crushed. After a few days, Park learned about everything and asked if Donghyun wanted him to go teach the guy a lesson. The redhead knew Park would eventually face the scumbag, but he ordered Park to stay away if that happens, as he wanted to settle his score with the guy himself. At night, beneath a bridge, Jooyoung believed it was impossible since Moonyong got his ass whooped by the weaker one. The persistent guy ignored his negative words and decided to somehow make it possible. He ordered his man to use the schools under them to gather 100 men who could move well. Moonyong doubted the 2 beasts could win against 100 men in a fight. 2 years ago, at a restaurant in Busan, Moongil called the food delicious and wondered why Cheonsu was holding back. He learned the guy was a picky eater, so he decided to eat Cheonsu's food as well. He suddenly brought up Moonyong, who was facing Park for some reason. Mun mentioned his men were feeling hopeless, even though they were close to conquering the whole nation, all because of the protagonist. Cheonsu smiled and let the guy speak. Mun learned Moonyong almost defeated Donghyun, so maybe they could use the guy to destroy Park for good. Cheonsu ordered him to get up and forget about Park, as they had worse things to deal with. He saw the army of men gathering outside. The gang leader became frustrated as he saw them eating. He ordered his men to kill the scumbags, so the whole gang began throwing furniture and breaking the restaurant's glass. Mun got annoyed as he was hoping to eat the delicious balls for lunch. He ordered his men to get ready, and both gangs charged towards each other to attack. Cheonsu looked at the horrible sight and enjoyed it. The gang leader moved forward, but Cheonsu destroyed him with one punch. He began thinking about using Moonyong against Park someday. At the school building, Moonyong gathered 100 men and announced his objective. The men became terrified as they all knew how tough Park was. Moonyong took their attention and explained their goal was to hunt down Park. He saw their terrified expressions and felt pissed off, realizing they were all literal wimps. He believed they were tired of suppressing themselves. The guy tried motivating them and helped them understand that Park and Donghyun were still just humans, no matter how strong they looked. He questioned if they doubted that 100 men were weaker than Park with him on their side. He convinced them to hunt down Park and assured them they could do whatever after that. Moonyoung continued and announced the self-proclaimed shitty gang who was terrified of Park. After defeating the beast, he aimed to crush Nexus and rise to the top. Moonyoung invited everyone to support him so that one day, they could all stand on top. The men got fired up, so they all became determined to crush Park for good. Suddenly, the protagonist himself smashed the door open, and with a terrifying expression, he made it clear that 100 won't be enough to take him down. Park got ready to destroy everyone and confidently walked towards the stage to confront their crappy leader. Moonyoung was happy he decided to appear, so the protagonist ordered him to move forward as he wanted to teach the guy a lesson. Moonyoung smirked maliciously while his men threw glass shards all over Park's body. He began bleeding, but Moonyoung didn't give him a second to process what was happening and threw a punch. Park blocked it but got his arm wrecked as the cheeky scumbag used splinters while attacking. Moonyoung called it just the beginning as he ordered his army to finish Park. The protagonist stood his ground against the men, but suddenly realized everyone had been sprayed with splinters, which meant Moonyoung was using them to destroy Park's arms and exhaust him. He took care of multiple men but got hit by a bat from behind. Park sent the guy flying and tore apart his shirt to use it for his arms. The evil leader ordered his army to move forward and attack, and as the beast faced everyone alone, the fight lasted for a couple of hours. Despite the shitty circumstances, Park became the legend and wrecked Moonyoung and his men all by himself. The evil scumbag couldn't believe he was getting destroyed, even though he never let anyone win against him, no matter how strong they were. He had even taken down the national #1, but now he was getting his ass whooped by Park. He couldn't understand how someone could hold this much strength. The protagonist finished Moonyoung for good and ordered him to never hold his head high. He humbled the guy and made it clear to never forget this day, or else he'd get crushed again. Moonyoung became frustrated and screamed in pain. The next night, Moonyoung couldn't understand what went wrong. It was hard for him to believe a single guy took down 100 men and wrecked his shit. Moonyoung finally accepted that he might never get anywhere close to the protagonist. Ju-young appeared and questioned why he had such a miserable expression. He reminded his leader that he was the legendary Moonyoung and believed he would come out victorious someday, no matter the cost. Moonyoung finally got up and apologized for acting like a wimp and letting his emotions get in the way. After this incident, Moonyoung and his goons disappeared, but the fight that went down soon caught everyone's attention. Many were amazed to learn the protagonist took down 100 goons. The news traveled really fast, and people wondered if he was the nation's #1 now. They doubted Nexus could win against Park. Cheonsu became desperate and tried destroying Park's district, but Donghyun and Park were literal beasts who couldn't be stopped. It began with Incheon and Gyeonggi, and slowly all the chapters got their asses whooped by the protagonist. Everyone around the nation started believing Nexus was finished after this. Mun suggested they could just gang up on Park, but Cheonsu called the idea stupid as he didn't want to stain Nexus's name by becoming some crappy gangbanger. Cheonsu hoped he could destroy the guy with brute strength to spark fear in everyone who believed in Park. Mun became excited, assuming it was his time to take action, but Cheonsu announced he was planning on dealing with Park himself. Mun was against it. Lion appeared and spoke against it since Cheonsu's plan would put the whole gang at stake. He called it risky, but Cheonsu assumed Lion was indirectly saying he'd fail. Lion clarified he did trust Cheonsu and the situation was bad, but he didn't think the small district was worth the risk. He helped Cheonsu remember their real aim was different, so he suggested Cheonsu should listen to his men for once. The leader believed Nexus would lose its authority if they ganged up on Park, so Lion came up with an alternative and revealed he knew the perfect guy who would face the beast. He believed that guy would perfectly take care of the shitty situation. At the martial arts building, Moonyoung kept practicing tirelessly to become as strong as possible, but he was still not satisfied with his progress. Cheonsu walked in with a cheeky smirk and shared he knew a plan that could make things faster. Cheonsu invited the guy to come work with him instead. Moonyoung knew Nexus was having a crappy time because of the protagonist. He assumed no one could beat Park since he himself lost. Cheonsu smiled and called it a problem. He got straight to the point and ordered Moonyoung to destroy Park. In return, he could have the district for himself. Moonyoung called it funny, as it sounded like he was being invited to become a lackey. Cheonsu didn't care what he thought, which made the guy angry, so he decided to test if Cheonsu was really the real deal. Moonyoung moved forward to throw a punch, but the Nexus leader stopped it with no effort. Cheonsu thought their goals aligned, and since he had the money and a plan to destroy Park, he was just looking for a guy who would carry it out. With Moonyoung's assistance, Cheonsu believed his plan would roll smoothly. The guy agreed on hearing him out. Cheonsu called him wise and knew he'd love the plan. On a rainy day, Donghyun was minding his own business but suddenly got surrounded by a huge gang of thugs. He began attacking as they charged at him to crush the guy. Donghyun believed Nexus would stick to rules, which is why he got caught off guard. The redhead still didn't give up and continued to fight the gang with his powerful kicks, but his own friend betrayed him. Moonyoung used the opportunity to corner him and destroy the guy for good. Donghyun realized he was in a horrible situation with no hope of winning. As Park saw the text, he became frustrated and quickly reached Moonyoung's location. That's how his downfall started. Park saw injured Donghyun tied up. This was going to be their last battle from 2 years ago. With a terrifying expression, Park reminded Moonyoung about last time, but the persistent scumbag made it clear that he wouldn't stop looking forward unless Park pulled out his eyeballs. Moonyoung used a metal rod and instead of hitting Park, struck Donghyun's knee, wrecking his life. The protagonist felt so much rage that he rushed towards Moonyoung to stop him for good, but the villain's goons used chains to stop him from moving forward. They all began pulling the chains to somehow bring Park down, while Moonyoung's right-hand man started hitting our boy with a metal rod. Park gripped the metal chains and used his brute strength to pull them. He sent the men flying, but Moonyoung maliciously laughed and advised him to say his last words. The men somehow managed to hook the chains to immobilize Park completely. Moonyoung frustratingly called people like Park annoying, those who acted like heroes and made a big deal out of rules and friendships. The evil scumbag believed winning mattered most, so he smashed Donghyun's leg to relieve his frustration and challenged our boy to save his precious friend. Park began using brute strength to somehow free himself, defeating multiple guys and shocking everyone by breaking through the metal chains with his hands. The goons started spilling petrol everywhere to proceed with their plans, panicking as they saw Park's beast-like strength. Moonyoung jumped forward to stop him and, with a metal pipe, smashed Park's head so hard it started bleeding. The protagonist began bleeding heavily and dropped down to his knees, unable to control his body anymore. Moonyoung became proud, despite his shitty tricks. He called it his victory and started stomping on Park, putting him in his place. The goons warned him to leave quickly, as they had already lit the fire, but Moonyoung had a score to settle since he clearly remembered what happened last time. The shitty villain repeated Park's words while the others watched him with concerned expressions. His men kept calling him to evacuate, but Moonyoung ignored their words. A few men dragged him out forcefully, but the shitty villain kept yelling that he was the strongest in the country. Donghyun ended up blaming himself for what Park went through. He believed the protagonist would have destroyed the scumbag if he hadn't been a burden. Donghyun felt horrible for dragging Park down with him 2 years ago. Park finally freed his friend, and they both safely got out of the building that was on fire. After they recovered, the police came out of nowhere, making them realize everything that went down had been pre-planned. Both of them ended up being held accountable for what happened at the building, and many witnesses came forward to oppose them. The police were unfair as well. Later, it turned out the building that burned down was Cheonsu's family's, so the guy hired a big law firm to destroy their lives. Their parents ended up paying huge settlements, and when they were at their limits, the scumbag demanded a public apology from both of them. Park came out of the shower and overheard his dad's phone call. The guy tried asking his friend for some money but didn't get any help. His father brushed things off with a fake smile on his face while his friend advised him to discipline his son. As the guy finished his call, he came out to see Park had already left. He guessed it was only natural after what went down. Park went outside and tried controlling his rage. He clenched his fists and punched a tree with all his might. The protagonist realized his mindset was delusional. He thought he was unstoppable, but in the face of money and power, he couldn't do shit. That's how the war came to an end. Our boy got called by the gang. Cheonsu confronted him and kept beating Park to a pulp, but he didn't fight back. He learned fists alone weren't enough to win all wars. The protagonist had to get down on his knees in front of Cheonsu. The shitty leader mocked his cheap tricks and helped Park understand how the real world works. He warned the protagonist to never fight again and to keep his head down, acting like he never existed. Cheonsu called this a punishment for whatever Park had done. Park had no choice but to go along with his shitty plans. Cheonsu ordered his men to beat Park up to test if he had really learned the lesson to never fight back. Donghyun finally finished the story and confirmed he had told everything he knew. Choi felt sad for him and explained that this was the reason he tried backing off. He had complete faith in Park, but still believed he might become a burden again. Choi patted his head and tried comforting him, saying she didn't think he was a burden at all and that this time they had her and Junu on their side. The girl shared she'd been through quite a hard time as well. Donghyun felt motivated and became determined to reach a different conclusion this time. At Junu's office, the guy recalled what had happened so far. He knew Taisu was just a cash cow, while Inshin's men were Nexus slaves. He was aware none of their opponents so far were Nexus's actual combat force. Junu felt the same about Moonyoung. He thought it was stupid to assume the guy could beat Park at his current level, so Junu came to the conclusion that Cheonsu was trying to buy time for a reason. Park got a text out of nowhere. He tried checking it but suddenly saw a car coming his way to end his life. The protagonist barely dodged, but without wasting a second, another car tried the same trick. He barely managed to survive. Someone threw a picture out of the car. Our boy picked it up and found a picture of Choi and Donghyun at the gym. He quickly caught on and guessed Moonyong was behind it. Cheonsu ordered Moon-gil to help Moonyong, which surprised the guy. The leader clarified he didn't need to do any dirty work. He ordered Moon to just send his guys to back up Moonyong. He asked Moon to lend all the forces he had, but the guy rejected the idea, as he trained all of them himself. He didn't want a shitty scumbag ordering them around, so he decided to take Park down himself. Cheonsu assured him he believed in Moon, but since they needed to focus on something important right now, this was a horrible time to deal with such a mess personally. Cheonsu called his plans much more important, and thought Moonyong was good enough for the job. He ordered Moon to focus on the important matters instead, and somehow convinced the guy to listen. Moon agreed, which made his leader feel relieved. At the gym, Dongyeon took a shower to feel refreshed. A man sneaked in and somehow opened his locker to find his phone. The guy used a special gadget to hack it, which helped him install a tracker. After a while, as the redhead walked back, he suddenly got attacked by a biker, but his fast reflexes saved his life. It didn't stop with the surprise attack, as he saw an AC falling from the sky. Dongyeon managed to dodge it as well. The bikers rushed toward him for a second attack, but Dongyeon jumped forward and scared them away. They gave him a picture as well. This time, it was Park's picture, which confused the redhead. He became frustrated and wondered what Moonyong was trying to pull this time. Moonyong and his men gathered at the assigned location. Munli opened the door and walked forward. He greeted the shitty scumbag and offered a handshake, but the cocky guy called it stupid and ordered him to just do as he said. Moonyong began mocking them since they got their asses whooped by the protagonist already. He called the goons useless but hoped they'd perform better under him. Munli gritted his teeth after hearing the insults. Moonyong didn't stop and mentioned Park was about to arrive soon so they could watch the shit show from the sidelines. Outside the gym, Dongyeon became concerned, so he quickly called Park, but didn't get any response. Meanwhile, Park received a fake picture with a location from Dongyeon's own phone. He assumed it was real and became enraged. The guy rushed toward the location to avoid wasting even a second. Dongyeon reaches a location he got from Park's phone. He quickly catches up and realizes it was all fake. He begins feeling frustrated and hopes the past doesn't get repeated. Since they were able to deal with Dongyeon Kim through their cheap tricks, Moonyong feels relieved. With a cocky attitude, he believes there's no need for any backup for a guy like Park. Mun Lee calls the guy shameless, and the goons point toward the front gate. The shitty scumbag suddenly begins smiling. He feels great seeing Park again, so he invites the guy to come up and get himself destroyed again. Moonyong mentions the redhead to anger Park even further. The protagonist sees a huge army of men in his way. One of the guys steps forward for a one-on-one fight as he looks up to Park, but the protagonist ignores his words and wrecks him instantly. Without wasting a second, Park charges toward the army and makes his way through them by destroying the guys with his brute strength. He runs toward the school building in a hurry to save his friend. Moonyong becomes excited to see Park is still insanely strong. He calls Mun Lee's army horrible, as they couldn't even lay a hand on Park. Mun reveals their new recruits. He just wants them to face a beast like Park, as it is an amazing experience. Mun Lee assures him not to worry, as shit's about to get serious. Park rushes inside and finds two men waiting for him. They call him an arrogant guy for assuming he can go through them easily. Park warns them to step back as he rushes forward to attack, but the guy easily dodges his attack and grabs Park's arm. He slams the protagonist down and advises him not to throw such shitty punches against the elite force of Nexus. Park hits the wall but tries getting up to face the men. The elite force member calls him delusional. He admits Park's strong but doubts he can win against a gang like Nexus with pure brute strength. He lets the protagonist know there's no need for a war to deal with him, since Nexus has now reached a completely new and unimaginable level. Park manages to get up, so he rushes forward to attack. The men warn him they're not planning on going easy. Both of them call his way of fighting completely trash and start choking the protagonist with their body weight and technique. The elite men reveal they all run on Mun's commands, who's the core of Nexus. They're confident they will steal the victory since he's nothing against real skills. They try suffocating Park so he loses consciousness, but he tries smashing his back on the wall to free himself. The men call it useless, and one of them uses a new technique to continue choking the protagonist. The guy calls his technique Lion Killer. Park begins bleeding from his mouth while the man shares that humans can win against even lions with this technique. The protagonist runs toward a wall. The men call it useless, but he ignores their words and successfully smashes one of their heads on it at the cost of his own. They still keep their shit together to continue choking Park. His eyes begin losing focus, but Park remains determined and pulls the same trick again. He rams both his and his enemies' heads on the ground. They both struggle to contain him but still keep hanging on tightly, so Park smashes his head the third time. The elite force member gets his head wrecked and finally falls down. The protagonist frees himself and easily destroys the other guy as well. Before the fight, Munchad made it clear that they can't win against Park. They called it unfair since they already went through insane training to reach this point. But even though he understood them and the determination they had in their eyes, he knew they'd assume they can win. But soon, they're going to learn their lesson. The elite force members finally learn Park is a literal beast. They thought it was unfair for Mun to be sending them in since he didn't even trust them. But the guy called it necessary and admitted no one on their side could ever win against Park. It doesn't make them weak. It means Park is just a different kind of human. He believes in his men and wants them to use their strength to slow him down. Mun ordered them to only exhaust Park as much as they can, and once he's on edge, the protagonist will have to face the fastest boxer they have on their side. A new elite combatant greets Park, who's trying to catch his breath after the previous fight. Choi picks Donghyun up on her bike but disappointingly shares it's still going to take them an hour despite the top speed. She also mentions some guys and suddenly stops somewhere. Donghyun recognizes the Incheon men. Insu speaks up and assures them he has already taken care of the hackers. The guy orders everyone to begin moving. Choi grins, and the whole gang starts rushing toward Park's location. At the school, Park begins his fight with the fastest guy, but not a single punch connects. The guy predicts all his moves with no effort. A few minutes before the fight, Moon advised his fastest man to face Park once he's exhausted, and believes he needs to hurry up to save his friend. Mun predicted Park's going to rush, which will be easy to read. The combatant was ordered to keep fooling Park while maintaining his distance to buy as much time as he can. The guy thought it was stupid, but Mun convinced him not to pull anything stupid since they're facing Park. Even if victory looks certain, Moon told him to still hold back. The guy becomes impatient and hits Park with a jab. He knows the protagonist simply cannot read it. Most martial artists use their whole body in advance to attack, but he's different. He throws the attacks first, while his body simply follows his actions. With his technique, Park can never predict a punch is coming his way. The guy lands another crazy punch, pushing Park back. He decides to finish the protagonist but suddenly remembers Mun's orders, so he steps back and grits his teeth while wondering what's so crazy about a guy like Park. He doesn't understand the hype and kicks Park in the stomach. The protagonist feels exhausted but continues to attack. No matter what he throws, the combatant dodges it and calls Park nothing more than an animal with no brain. He becomes cocky and assumes he can win, but the guy suddenly hits the wall. He remains calm but admits it's a clever move to push him back like this. Park attacks, but he dodges and smirks as he reveals he doesn't even need space to throw a crazy punch. The guy attempts a 1-inch punch while challenging Park to survive. The protagonist eats the strong punch and gets thrown back, but he gets back up and pounces at the guy to finish him. The combatant guesses he doesn't have any brain cells, so he hits Park with the same punch. The guy laughs and wonders if Park never learned about such a famous punch. He asks how shitty Park feels, but the protagonist remains calm and charges at him again. The man becomes frustrated seeing his attacks didn't slow Park at all. He challenges Park to deal with another move and begins throwing multiple punches at once. He keeps on hitting, but suddenly Park grabs his arm and orders him to stop his bullshit. With rage in his eyes, the protagonist begins wrecking the guy. Mun gets informed that the second floor is already down. He was expecting much more, so he assumes the combatant probably forgot his orders and made a stupid move. He decides to forget about it and still believes his man must have dealt some damage at least. Mun has already set the stage on the next floors, so Park has to fight once more despite being injured. Mun is confident Park will start cracking after this. The informant comes up in a hurry and shares that the third floor is already down, which shocks the leader. He wonders if his floor 2's combatant failed this miserably. The guy predicts that since 2 floors have gone down already, a domino effect has begun. The 4th floor gets wrecked as well, which makes Moonyong laugh. He feels good for some reason, and with an evil face, he reveals it's because he's getting to see Mun acting like a wuss. The guy becomes angry and orders the shitty scumbag to take things seriously since Park's going to reach the rooftop in a bit. The cocky guy doesn't listen and advises Mun to think before saying a word. He orders the guy to just sit back with his goons and enjoy him ending Park's shitty life. The informant shares that Park is almost here. On the 4th floor, the protagonist gets attacked by a goon with a knife, but he easily takes care of the guy. Another one charges at him with a weapon, but the beast breaks his arm without showing any mercy and destroys him. He finally reaches the rooftop where Moonyong and his goons stand waiting for him. The protagonist gets to the point and asks about his friend with a terrifying expression. But Moonyong maliciously laughs and reveals the picture was totally fake, so he just walked right into a death trap. A net gets thrown towards Park. He's able to see it coming, but it's too late for him to dodge. The protagonist gets stuck while the goons move forward to beat him to a pulp. He grits his teeth and screams in anger. Moonyong suddenly hears bike noises. He becomes shocked and terrified as he sees a huge biker gang coming towards the school with Donghyun. The redhead asks Choi to drop him, so she smiles and helps him make an insane landing. As he begins beating men to a pulp, the Incheon men join him. Insu orders Donghyun to go forward and save his friend, while assuring they'll take care of the men down here. The redhead thanks them and begins running. Moonyoung gets extremely frustrated and calls the redhead a sneaky rat. Insu uses his bike to push the army back so the redhead can easily rush toward his homie. The goons call him a traitor, but the bikers ignore their words and continue to fight. Moonyoung's right-hand man joins the army and starts beating multiple men, but Donghyun kicks him in the face, destroying his cocky behavior. While Insu is busy ordering his men, someone tries kicking him, but he barely manages to block it in time. Mun-Lee greets him with an arrogant attitude, but suddenly gets attacked by Donghyun. The guy orders the redhead to focus on saving his friend instead, as they have no reason to fight each other. He reveals he's just interested in teaching Insu a lesson. Insu gets ready to throw hands and assures Donghyun to keep moving as he can take care of everything himself. The redhead leaves for Park. Mun feels relieved as he finally gets the chance to take his anger out on Insu. The scar-faced guy goes along with it and gets ready to throw some punches. They both begin fighting. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Moonyoung frustratingly looks down on them, but then suddenly calms down as he's confident the plan will still roll perfectly. He orders his goons to finish Park, so they start hitting him with wooden bats. Park almost destroys the net while eating so much damage. Moonyoung calls his goons crappy and moves forward to attack the protagonist with a bat. Park finally frees himself, but the shitty guy thinks it's too late. He swings his bat with everything he has, but Park manages to hit him as well. The goons grab onto him and try pinning him down while Moonyoung loses his patience and pulls out a screwdriver from his pocket, ready to end Park's life. Moonyoung rushes forward to gauge out our boy's eyes for looking down on him, but Donghyun finally arrives and stops him with a kick in the face. He's a bit disappointed Park's having a hard time with such crappy goons. The protagonist smiles and shares he did his best to save some for the redhead. They both team up and wreck the army of goons with no effort. The tides finally turn in their favor. Moonyoung loses his mind and begins gritting his teeth in frustration. He becomes determined to take his revenge, so the guy starts tying a rope around his wrist. He pounces at Donghyun and drags him down with himself, jumping off the rooftop. He throws the guy down and grabs his rope, but the redhead manages to grip his foot tightly. The crazy guy begins acting like an animal and hits Donghyun's head, trying to free his grip. He calls it punishment, and warns the redhead to never look up again, as scum like him are only worth crawling on the ground. Donghyun steps onto the wall and pushes it with all his power. He mocks the shitty villain and destroys the window to land inside while Moonyoung hits the wall head first. He gets his face wrecked, but as he gets pulled back onto the rooftop again, the shitty villain becomes terrified to see Park pulling his rope. The protagonist, filled with rage, becomes determined to teach him a lesson. Moonyoung tries to free himself, but Park pulls him so hard he flies back at him. The protagonist smashes his head with a punch and sends him flying again. He pulls the rope once more and continues to destroy the shitty villain for good. Donghyun appears and stops him. He understands Park's rage but wants to settle his scores as well. The protagonist gives him 5 minutes, which puts a smile on his face. He confronts Moonyoung to settle old business. The trash scumbag frustratingly tries to fight back and wonders if they think they're some heroes with him as the villain of their story. He hits Donghyun and calls them losers who couldn't win because they're weak. The guy thinks it's unfair for them to take such a shitty revenge over what happened in the past. But Donghyun wrecks his face and orders him to shut his bullshit. He continues kicking Moonyoung and lets him know he never won. The redhead calls it cowardice and makes it clear that he's a huge trashy scumbag. Park ends up punching Moonyoung. The redhead gets annoyed and orders him to step back since his 5 minutes are not over yet. Park apologizes as he couldn't hold himself back, so they both begin beating the guy together. Moonyoung becomes terrified and tries stopping them, but it's too late as they both completely wreck his body and destroy his teeth as well. Moonyoung grabs the redhead's leg and begins begging for his life. He promises he's never going to stand against them ever. The guy becomes desperate and begs them to let him slide once. Park knows it's bullshit, so he hands over a metal rod and makes it clear that they're not letting him blab out of this one. Donghyun grabs it, and despite Moonyoung's continuous begging, he grips the rod tightly and almost hits his leg. The pathetic trash cries and screams but suddenly realizes he didn't get hit. The redhead looks down on him but thinks it's enough as he doesn't want to drop as low as the shitty villain. He looks back and watches Park using his insane strength to demolish Moonyoung's knee. With eyes filled with rage, he feels unsatisfied going home without destroying the scumbag's life. The men outside the school notice Moonyoung's trash body hanging from the rooftop. Moon smiles and guesses it's over. He and his goons raise their hands and accept defeat. The guy excitedly reveals he will continue this some other day. Insu catches a breath and orders his men to stop fighting. On the rooftop, the redhead wonders who's their next target. Park reveals he's going straight for the leader, Cheonsu, next. At the hospital, Moonyoung sits in his wheelchair in a pathetic state with bandages all over his body. Elsewhere, at a school, a few men gather with weapons to slow down Park. The leader orders them to get ready as the protagonist enters the school. The men get terrified, but their leader tries to motivate them, so they stand their ground against Park. They start wimping out, which annoys the leader. Park suddenly pounces forward and destroys him in mere seconds. The goons get scared, but he continues forward and beats all of them to a pulp. Park sends the picture of the goons he wrecked to Choi. She laughs and shares that he's done dealing with the school. She gets surprised as she gets a positive report from both Insu and Donghyun as well. Junwoo ignores her words and keeps on thinking, which annoys the girl. He asks for some space and reveals he's almost done reaching the conclusion. Junwoo's eyes widen as he suddenly cracks the case. He gets up in excitement and finally understands it. She asks what's wrong, so Junwoo frustratingly reveals he knows what Cheonsu's trying to pull. It's the Pascal, a game that made its way to the top in only a few hours after release. He finds it suspicious that the traffic is still being generated even after a whole week. Because of this, the shares of the game have increased by 600%. Choi doesn't understand what he's trying to say, so Junwoo makes it clear that Nexus is behind all of this. At Cheonsu's office, Moon reveals he learned that the protagonist and his men are going around conquering all the schools one by one. People believe Nexus is laying low because the gang is too wimpy. As things are going, they will slowly lose all the control they have. Moon believes it's time they take action against this. Cheonsu understands his words and asks Lion about something. He replies that exactly 7 days later, their plan will become successful. Cheonsu orders Moon to just back down for a week and avoid wars with the enemy. He guarantees everything will be dealt with in a week. Cheonsu wants to avoid taking action against nobodies. He's confident that in just a few days, they'll have 100 billion won to their name. Cheonsu shares he still believes in Moon, so the guy thinks his leader is aiming for a better plan to ruin Park's progress. He puts his trust in Cheonsu Kim. At Junwoo's office, Choi assigns a few schools for Insu and Park to take care of, and as for Donghyun, she decides to assign Dongtaek High, a school led by Baekhyun Choi. She explains there's nothing extraordinary. The guy just has an MMA background, but it will be effortless for Donghyun. She finishes things for today, and wishes them good afternoon with a smile. As they all leave the place, Donghyun catches on and notices Choi's unusual behavior. When she's about to leave on her motorbike, the guy stops her and asks if she's sure about what she said since the guy she mentioned is from her own school. She's surprised he has a working brain. The girl hands him the helmet and invites him to ride with her unless he has other plans. They both reach a new place, so she begins her story and mentions someone who was a part of Nexus. Choi brought up her past as well. She learned her father was trash who ran away with a woman he was cheating on their mother with. Choi's mom ended up working day and night to support the whole family. Things kept getting worse, so Choi began despising her life. She wished she'd stop skipping school so much, but the woman was totally powerless. Her brother felt concerned about everything as well. Choi began hanging around with people who had similar shitty lives. She felt a sense of belonging and finally found people she could call her friends. She kept engaging in weird activities but trusted them to always have her back in it. Choi ended up getting taken by the police one day, so her teacher came to pick her up. She advised him not to waste his breath as she was dropping out soon. The man didn't care about her business, but he found it weird as she had insanely good grades for someone who didn't want to continue studying. He advised her to study even harder, but she called it pure luck and tried brushing it off. The teacher didn't agree and reminded her that most kids can never score 80% from pure luck. He gave her all the books she threw out earlier, but made it clear he didn't care about it. He allowed her to do whatever since it was her own life, but he ordered her to keep her shit together at least till she actually dropped out. He began leaving and advised her not to pull stupid shit again in front of the police. Choi took his words seriously, and later that night, she sat on a bench near her gang and began reflecting. The nearby activities caught her attention. A musclehead blondie slapped some kid over money. They started shaking in fear and promised they'd do better, but the guy was too furious. He had no intentions of letting it go, so the guy just opened his pants zip and began peeing on the innocent students. He laughed maliciously, but Choi had enough of his crap, so she got up and threw her helmet towards the blondie. She called them crazy as they went too far with literal kids. She believed they crossed the line. The blondie began bleeding from his head and felt enraged. The shitty goons grabbed her hair and started surrounding her instead. One of them slapped Choi and ordered her to shut her crap. The blondie frustratingly wondered why she was trying to act like a hero. She felt the pain in her cheek but suddenly noticed a single man beating the gang all by himself. The guy used a bat to destroy multiple men. Choi recognized he was her little brother. She became confused while the goons charged at him to teach the guy a lesson. He didn't lose against anyone and easily won against the lackeys. The brother used Choi's helmet and destroyed the blondie effortlessly, shocking everyone. He got up and coldly announced he was the district's new leader, Baekhyun Choi. Choi and her younger brother had nothing in common. She was rebellious, but he used to do his best to become a better son. But he ended up becoming the target of Nexus. A gang member began beating the crap out of him. The trash goon saw the brat backing off, so he repeated his words about Baekhyun's sister. The guy kept on rambling, but Baekhyun became so pissed, he moved forward to throw a punch. The gang member dodged it easily and punched Baekhyun to teach him a lesson. Poor Baekhyun didn't get the opportunity to live a normal school life. He was aware no one was coming to save him, so the boy pounced onto the Nexus goon, and since he had no choice left, he used his teeth and ripped off the scumbag's nose. Baekhyun lost his shit and challenged everyone to never mess with him. The goons charged at him, but he confidently faced them all. Soon, the rumors about his fights began circling throughout the school. Out of nowhere, a Nexus member came and invited him to join the gang. He joined Nexus and became unstoppable, but then one day things changed. As he was walking home, he saw his partner, who warned him about a trap. But the guy stood confidently despite seeing multiple men charging at him. He wrecked one and made it clear that he was never going to run away. The fight continued for hours, and he finally fell down against the shitty goons. They stomped his face, but the guy couldn't move anymore. He became frustrated as he realized he was finished, but then Cheonsu came and saved his ass. The leader called Baekhyun amazing for holding out despite such horrible odds. He smiled and ordered Baekhyun to drop the formalities. He felt inspired. The goons got terrified seeing Cheonsu, but they decided to take him down as well. All his life, Baekhyun despised seeing people's backs. His sister and parents were all shitty people. Everyone he had in life was a cowardice rat. But everything changed for him when he saw Cheonsu in front of him. Everyone charged at once, but Cheonsu beat them all effortlessly. Baekhyun's eyes began burning with determination again. He decided to follow Cheonsu for his life purpose. Choi confronted him about his decision later, but he didn't care about her words at all. He revealed Cheonsu himself chose him, and he was only here to fulfill Cheonsu's orders. He made it clear to never get in Cheonsu's way, and announced he'd kill the person with his own hands if it came to that. At the pool club, Baekhyun addressed the issue of a huge number of dumb brats who didn't know they were supposed to fear Nexus. He believed it was because of zero support from the teacher's side. The guy called them wimps for not cooperating and wondered why they acted so carelessly. He decided to end their nonsense and ordered them to cooperate with whatever plans he would suggest. The teacher spoke up and made it clear that the teachers didn't care about his shitty orders. Baekhyun coldly asked if they had a problem. The teachers called him correct, so he didn't hesitate and used the snooker stick to destroy the teacher and stab his leg, shocking everyone else. He invited the others to come at him but warned the wimps not to take his actions lightly. Choi felt sad about her brother's situation, but she couldn't do anything to stop it. The teachers started getting tormented every day. Baekhyun kept destroying their lives in a shitty manner. Most teachers in the district gave up and left the schools. Choi's homeroom teacher was surprised teachers would leave for such a cause. He was ready to throw hands if he ever needed to confront the student himself. He guessed the teachers could avoid all the issues by resigning, but he was worried about his students who were continuously getting death threats from the gang. The guy became determined to protect them no matter what. The teachers who didn't back off got their lives completely wrecked by the guy. Choi's homeroom teacher ended up being sent to the hospital. He assured the girl he was fine, but at that point Choi felt a new kind of guilt. She felt ashamed, so the girl threw her ring away and left Nexus for good. She made it her responsibility to destroy the scumbags herself. She finished her story and believed people couldn't change so easily, so he didn't need to hesitate just because Baekhyun was her brother. Donghyun decided he would try his best to convince the guy. At some food store, Park hunts down the school's leader, and despite hearing him beg, the guy shows no mercy and wrecks him. Insu completes his job as well. They both laugh and wonder what's wrong with Donghyun. The redhead calls them stupid and explains his school is just really far. He enters the snooker club and becomes stunned when he finds no one inside. Somewhere else, as Choi moves towards her destination, she hears a woman begging for help. Choi stops and asks what's wrong, but the woman fools her and reveals her true colors. Choi feels confused but catches on quickly as she finds herself surrounded by men. The goons order her not to fight back, but Choi hits one with her helmet and pushes him back. The woman tries something but Choi smacks her as well. She suddenly gets hit by a bat and loses consciousness. The men inform their boss that she has been captured. Choi gets locked up. She keeps knocking on the door while frustratingly yelling at her brother to let her out. Baekhyun finally appears and learns she has been yelling for hours now. He kicks the door and orders her to keep her mouth shut for at least 5 days so he doesn't need to kill anyone. He makes it clear that if she continues this, he's going to assume she's getting in Cheonsu's way and wreck her life. She begins smiling and lays down to take it easy, just like he said. She repeats his warning and laughs. At Cheonsu's building, Moon fills him in on the situation. He knows Park and his gang are obsessed with loyalty, so they won't do anything stupid that puts Choi's life in danger. Cheonsu grins and hopes they can keep this up. He reveals the plan has almost reached completion. At Junu's office, the guy decides to be careful since their enemies have Choi as a hostage. But he disappointingly shares that if they don't take action, Cheonsu will become a multi-millionaire even Junu can't defeat. He admits it's risky, but orders them to keep destroying the gang little by little. Insu asks a question. He understands Nexus can be defeated, but that still won't stop the leader from reaching his goals, since the stocks have already crossed all expectations. Insu believes they've already lost. Junu laughs as he understands his words, but explains they're ignoring something important. Junu is determined to win at all costs, even if he has to use shitty methods. He assures them not to worry, and reveals they still have a plan that will change the tides. Junu calls Insu correct and reveals Nexus has increased the game's shares to 8 times their original price, but the stocks haven't been sold yet. He believes it's because their plan still needs more time to be successful. With an evil expression, Junu predicts Cheonsu's real plan to sell the stocks on short. The whole explanation goes over Park's head, so Junu clarifies that Cheonsu borrowed the shares first and is now planning on liquidating them completely. Whenever he needs to return everything, the guy is aiming to just buy the necessary number of shares and return them to the owner. Junu continues his explanation and predicts the leader is going to push the price to completely crash. Since the redemption date is close, Junu explains the leader will use his influence to destroy the share prices, but that's where Park and Insu are going to jump in and stop everything. Dongyun feels concerned about Choi, but Junu assures him they're going to get her back. He reveals he tracked her hours ago so she can be saved anytime. Dongyun gets angry and questions why he kept such a thing hidden for so long. Seeing his passion, Junu guesses the redhead might be in love, which embarrasses the guy. Dongyun tries making an excuse and begins leaving to save Choi first. Junu orders the others to get on their feet as well, but they both remain confused. Insu forgets about the fancy talk and helps Park understand they just need to wreck some more goons. Junu laughs wickedly and orders them to deal with the goons while he takes care of the mess with money. Park and Dongyun reach the location and break open the door. They see an army of goons hiding inside. The men are surprised they got tracked, but they all rush forward to defeat the beast and his friend. Park decides to take care of the goons and orders his homie to move forward and protect Choi. The redhead rushes towards the helpless girl. A goon informs Baekhyun they're being attacked by the protagonist. Choi calls her brother stupid and reveals she had a tracker on her all this time. She lets him know he's about to get a beating. Baekhyun opens the door, and with a cold expression, he calls her the one who screwed up. Dongyun and Park finally reach the floor, but they both end up stopping as they see the scumbag taking his own sister hostage. Baekhyun warns them and orders them to just leave, which frustrates the redhead. He glares at the guy. Baekhyun suddenly gets his ass slammed on the floor by his sister. She reminds him she isn't as weak as she looks. Dongyun takes the opportunity and moves forward. He throws a crazy punch, sending the guy backward. Baekhyun starts feeling shitty. He admits he made a mistake underestimating his sister, but since he doesn't want anyone to wreck Cheonsu's plans, he becomes determined to destroy the guys. Baekhyun throws a window toward the redhead. The guy mocks him for his cheap tricks, but Baekhyun grabs his face and corrects him, saying it's called strength. He almost wrecks Dongyun's face, but his punch gets dodged. The guy keeps throwing attacks continuously, but the redhead sees through everything and remains unscathed. He throws a kick and wonders who labeled this crap strength. Dongyun guesses it was their shitty leader. He tries explaining the guy is only using Baekhyun for himself, but Choi's brother keeps on glazing him and punches the wall in anger. Dongyun decides to teach him a lesson, so he hits the guy with a kick and throws him backward. The redhead calls him the biggest glazer. He knows Baekhyun has gone through tough times, but this is probably not what he wants to be. He reveals the harsh truth. Cheonsu probably doesn't give a crap about Baekhyun. He was only sent here to buy time. Dongyun tries to wake him up and questions why he's such a simp for Cheonsu. Baekhyun still doesn't understand, and in a desperate attempt to win, he charges forward. But the redhead destroys him instantly. He doesn't know what Baekhyun saw in his life but believes he's on the wrong path. This is hard for the guy to believe, as he had no other choice than to be a strong beast for survival. His leader helped him find a proper path. Baekhyun already knew he was doing terrible things, but that didn't matter because he had already decided to walk behind Cheonsu. Even if it's depressing or hard, he was happy to walk the road for someone who came into his crappy life and became the hope he always needed. Baekhyun stops them and starts screaming in rage. Choi grits her teeth, seeing his desperation. As her brother charges forward to attack, Dongyun wrecks him and hopes he stops, as it is getting depressing. Baekhyun clings onto him to keep on standing, but the redhead knocks him out. He still grabs Donghyun's leg with whatever power he has left and tries stopping them, but the guy gets stomped in the face. Choi's head starts going through all the memories. Her brother gets up even after so much beating. Donghyun feels a bit annoyed, but Choi stops him and steps forward herself. She slaps her brother and, with tears in her eyes, orders him to wake up. Choi reminds her that Nexus destroyed her friend's knee. Park's life got ruined through insane lawsuits, and Junu lost his precious friend and family. She helps him understand her shitty gang will someday betray him and destroy his life as well. She apologizes for what happened and begs him to change. Donghyun supports the girl and believes he should try harder to fix his own life. The redhead moves his hand forward and tells Baekhyun he can still change and start from zero. The desperate guy holds Donghyun's hand but suddenly pulls him in and attacks. He begins acting like a total animal and lets them know he's never betraying his leader. Baekhyun jumps through the window and escapes. Choi feels frustrated, but Donghyun assures her the punch didn't even connect. He's honestly more worried about her brother because once Cheonsu loses his shit, Baekhyun's whole life will shatter again. At Cheonsu's building, the leader observes his men selling short and learns their progress today is at 20%. Lion is amazed by how fast it's dropping. He feels bad for the people losing their money, but Cheonsu doesn't care one bit. He praises everyone and stops for today. But as he's about to leave, a trader begins screaming as he sees a 6% gain. They begin losing money, which shocks the leader. His men believe someone is manipulating the market from the outside. Somewhere else, Junwoo sees through their whole scheme and easily sets the tide in his favor. With an evil expression, he reveals Cheonsu is dead if the price begins flying. Cheonsu's men begin panicking, seeing the price soaring high. They hope it maintains a downward trend, but they finally lose their shit as the price crosses 18%, and the trade closes. Lion's face becomes colorless. He starts getting calls while the traders find it hard to imagine someone could manipulate the price like this. They can't believe it's possible, but Junwoo smiles at his place and somehow makes things possible. Cheonsu's anger becomes visible. He finally loses his patience and suddenly sees Baekhyun trying to enter. The guy calls Cheonsu and requests more backup while promising he will take care of it. He feels glad his leader is listening, but Cheonsu kicks him in the stomach and turns the guy into his punching bag. He sends Baekhyun flying and calls him worthless since he didn't fight till death to buy them the time they needed. Cheonsu orders Moon to listen and admits there's no other way for him to win besides getting his own hands dirty. He tells the guy to gather all the chapter leaders. Moon becomes excited as he understands what's going on. Cheonsu calls him correct and gets ready to deal with the protagonist himself. The next day, Cheonsu's trader is shocked as he sees the news about Pascal's partnership with Junwoo's corporation. The trend keeps rising, and everything goes according to Junwoo's plan. Cheonsu finds it hard to stop laughing and wonders what his enemy will do after this if they even have any cards left to play. Outside a school building, Cheonsu greets his army, the elite force of Nexus. Leaders from all the chapters gather in front of their leader. He decides to keep it simple and reminds them it only took 2 years to conquer all of Korea. They were able to make a name for themselves and gather money, but he knows everyone's already aware of Park's return. Because of the protagonist, more and more people are trying to get in Nexus's way. So with their gang's reputation in mind, Cheonsu orders them to bring Park in front of him before the day ends, with a terrifying expression. He wants to use Park as a stepping stone to make it clear to everyone what Nexus can do. The men yell out in determination, but out of nowhere, they all notice a car rushing toward the building. It breaks through the doors and charges straight toward the leader. The goons scatter everywhere to dodge it, and as the car stops in front of Cheonsu, Junwoo comes out laughing at their crappy little meeting. He calls them nothing more than a group of thugs and reminds Cheonsu about their last conversation. With a wicked smile, Junwoo celebrates his victory as he finally manages to steal Cheonsu's fake smile. The leader admits he wasn't expecting so much to happen, and calls Junwoo crazy for his insane game. Junwoo laughs and shares that he already knew this wasn't something normal people could pull off. He feels disappointed to see Cheonsu's backup plan is just to gather goons and gang up on Park like literal wimps. To avoid the shit show, Junwoo suggests they have a 3-on-3 fight instead. Cheonsu doesn't fall for his words, but Junwoo corrects himself and reveals this isn't a kid's game. When adults settle things, there's something called a deal that gets involved. Junwoo offers the game's rights, even if he has to deal with the loss, and he even confirms he will stop any vengeful bullshit if Cheonsu wins. But if Junwoo wins, he wants Cheonsu to step off and disband the shitty gang forever. Junwoo makes himself clear and believes if even such simple terms are hard for him to deal with, it means he's a pathetic little wuss. Cheonsu feels insulted, but to save his pride, he accepts the deal but adds one more thing. He demands Park all for himself if he manages to win. Because he's in such a shitty mood, he won't feel satisfied until he wrecks Park's life for good. With a terrifying expression, Cheonsu invites him to try his best. As the deal gets settled, Junwoo explains the rules and reveals that once all the fighters are down, the team loses. He chooses his 3 fighters while Cheonsu chooses Moon and Ji-hyuk, the head of the Gang 1 chapter. With everything at stake, Junwoo announces the fight's beginning, which will determine their fate. As the chosen ones come face to face with each other, Dongcheon wonders why he didn't get chosen. He believes he has everything the gorilla has and feels disrespected, but Cheonsu admits Ji-hyuk is stronger than both of them, which shocks the other guy. However, Cheonsu asks him to just be patient and see, as he's about to witness the insane strength the guy has. Ji-hyuk steps forward to go first, so Insu announces he's the one Ji-hyuk has to face. The musclehead feels a bit weird. He thought Insu would know better about weight classes and wonders if he's thinking straight. Insu understands his reasoning, but challenges him to see if that matters once he actually wins. Insu rushes forward and shocks everyone with his insane speed. Even the musclehead admits it and takes a lot of damage. Insu punches him, but the guy praises his efforts and sends him flying backward. Ji-hyuk is surprised Insu can do so much despite the weight difference. He removes his shoes, shocking the goons. Mun recognizes the gorilla is about to go all out, so he becomes excited as he's about to witness a crazy fight. Ji-hyuk gets ready to attack while Junu reminds Insu he's finished if he gets caught. The guy gets it but ends up lowering his guard while speaking. He gets caught by the musclehead, who reveals he's putting respect on Insu's name by going all out. He slams the scarhead on the ground, wrecking his back. Choi asks Insu to remain cautious as they all watch the gorilla picking him back up. He slams Insu back on the ground twice. Before the fight, Junu told Insu his chances of winning were extremely low. He explained Ji-hyuk was a literal fighting animal, and rumors even say he ripped apart a huge tree with sheer strength, both in mass and talent. Junu called him better than Insu, so the guy wondered if he should just drain him out. Insu frustratingly got up and made it clear that he would do his absolute best, even if winning was impossible. Junu wondered why Insu got so riled up, as he was expecting the guy to steal the victory since he's paying a shitload of money. Junu advised him not to feel hopeless and, with an evil look, believed there's definitely a way for a man to destroy even a fighter bull. In the present, Insu kicks the guy's stomach and frees himself, frustrating the goons. They get angry but notice Insu's barely hanging in there. The guy feels alive and realizes this is the reason Junu called it almost impossible. He admits if he gets caught in the same attack again, he's going to drop dead without a doubt. The musclehead rushes forward to finish the game, but Junu smirks and believes it's time Insu humbles the bull. The guy uses his hand to block Ji-hyuk's face. The musclehead thinks he's getting his sight blocked, but Insu pushes him aside effortlessly using a technique called Toromachi. Insu sees him charging again and admits he will need to play a lot more tricks to win. He decides to connect his punches and attacks the musclehead while maintaining a distance. Ji-hyuk easily blocks them and reminds Insu his punches are completely useless, but suddenly the guy switches to infighting and destroys Ji-hyuk's jaw. The gorilla recovers instantly and charges at him once again, but despite Mun's warnings, he doesn't change his path and gets his face destroyed by Insu's crazy punch. Despite such a heavy blow, the gorilla remains standing. He gets confused by Insu's crappy tricks, but as they both charge at each other, Insu orders him to keep his mouth shut and dodges the hands coming his way. He almost connects a punch, but this time Ji-hyuk sees through the old trick. Insu still remains 2 steps ahead and hits him hard on the face again. The goons start feeling anxious, but Moon advises them to chill out as it is impossible for Insu to attain victory with such weak punches. He believes time is still in favor of Ji-hyuk, so even if Insu continues dealing more damage, he needs a real critical blow to actually end the match. Insu gets pushed backward as he receives a heavy punch. Mun's guts tell him something's off. He suddenly notices Junu smiling and yells out to warn his man to stop, but it's too late for Ji-hyuk as he gets his nose smashed by Insu's knee attack. Junu begins grinning as things go the way he predicted. Ji-hyuk admits his mistake and finally understands Insu's plan. Mun becomes concerned but notices the musclehead has grabbed Insu's knee. Ji-hyuk is amazed by the move but reminds Insu he's no ordinary man. Insu doesn't understand what went wrong. He struggles to free himself and gets slammed once more. His homies become concerned, but Dongyan believes he's still okay. Ji-hyuk shows no mercy and keeps on demolishing the guy, but suddenly Insu throws dirt to throw him off and finally frees himself. The goons wonder how he's still standing. One of them feels weird and points out Insu has completely lost focus, but he's still standing. The guy moves forward and uses his elbows to cut through Ji-hyuk's skin. He instinctively continues to move and deals a lot of damage as well. Ji-hyuk becomes frustrated as he eats so many attacks. He throws a punch in rage, but Insu's punch connects first. The goons watching on the side no longer understand what's happening. They notice Insu's acting like a complete animal. Mun calls his goons correct and reveals Insu has pushed through his limits and has reached a new level, so now he's moving instinctively instead of using his head. He's now turned into an animal with nothing but reflexes and instincts controlling his moves. He believes only a seasoned fighter with insane mental power can pull off such a feat. Mun is shocked that the guy who betrayed his gang is suddenly inspiring him. Insu's moves completely change. His endurance goes through the roof, and the elbow cut can destroy anything in its path. Ji-hyuk admits he's in a horrible situation, so he needs to take the risk and somehow counter it, or else he'll lose. He rushes forward and grabs Insu with extreme rage in his eyes. Despite struggling, Insu gets smashed onto the ground again. As the smoke clears, Insu, in a pathetic state, feels crazy as he nearly dropped dead. Despite having extreme injuries, Insu gathers enough strength to get up and becomes the winner who destroyed Ji-hyuk. The crowd gets silent. but then Mun Lee decides to step in. The goons smirk and believe a founding member like Moon can never be defeated. Insu takes a fighting stance, but Moon punches the guy and sends him flying backwards so he can finally rest. Park observes the punch and recalls the special combatant pulling the same move against him. Mun invites Donghyun to come face him, as there is no need to keep two redheads around. He bets the winner can keep his hair. Donghyun confirms this again and reminds the guy it'll be hard to grow back such long hair. Mun knows already, but he's confident he's going to win, so he rushes forward and starts the fight. The goons scream in excitement seeing them go. They both dodge each other's attacks. Mun is able to land a blow, which sends the guy flying backward. Donghyun gets shocked as he recognizes it's Chinese martial arts. Mun lands multiple blows, which makes it obvious he has the upper hand. Choi calls it unfair to use such fancy moves in a street fight, but Junwoo explains even though some Chinese martial arts are not usable in real combat, there are still exceptions. It's hard for Choi to believe Mun has mastered something like that, but Junwoo thinks this much is to be expected since he's the heir of a famous martial arts family that became corrupted and used the skills for their crappy activities. Mun kicks him hard, but Donghyun still holds his ground and rushes forward. He disappoints the guy who was hoping for a better fight than this. Mun calls Donghyun's skills pathetic and destroys his face. Donghyun loses his mind and finally lands a kick. Mun admits the kicks have insane strength behind them, so he begins grinning and gets excited. Donghyun hits him with the same kick twice and admits he has no chance of winning, so he's just going to keep smashing the same spot until the guy falls. Mun sees through his moves and calls them absolutely pathetic. He destroys Donghyun's jaw and lets him know such obvious moves won't work while smacking his face. Donghyun ignores his words and repeats the same move. But Moon calls it basic and demolishes his collarbones with an insane punch. He feels disappointed, as he was expecting a real fight after hearing tales about Donghyun's skills. He wrecks the guy with another punch to the face. As a kid, the redhead used to get bullied wherever he went because he looked skinny. But then one day, his bullies annoyed Park and got their asses kicked. Donghyun got to witness the beast's insane power. He asked Park for some advice so he could be stronger too. The guy told him to just fight back whenever he got hit. From that day, Donghyun trained tirelessly, even though he knew the advice was complete dog shit. But that made him learn he could be better as well. He soon came to learn and accept that he had zero talent for fighting, and his skinny build was another disadvantage he couldn't change. In simple words, he could never reach Park's level. He knows some call him tenacious, but he doesn't find it pleasing, and it was never his intention to be tenacious. It's just he had nothing else going for him. Donghyun gets back up and tries whatever he can, even though he knows he's not a genius. He feels determined to keep fighting back against shitheads like Mun. He kicks the guy and remains tenacious until it turns into a talent of his. He finally wakes up and announces it's his turn to beat Mun's ass. Mun falls to his knees as his bone cracks from the kick. He finally understands why the guy kept hitting the same basic move over and over again. Mun tries, but he's unable to move his legs. Donghyun shows no mercy and begins smashing his head. He keeps punching the guy and challenges him to repeat his insults again. Donghyun mocks his cocky behavior from earlier, which frustrates Moon, but Donghyun doesn't let him go. He smashes the guy's face with his knee, shocking the watchers. Mun keeps blocking the punches and finally gets an opportunity to attack. He pushes Donghyun backwards and gets tired of his bland moves. He calls Donghyun a pathetic trash with no talent. It's hard for him to accept that he could ever be defeated by someone like Donghyun, but the redhead shuts his mouth as he throws another attack. Mun pushes him back, but the guy rushes forward to attack again. They both keep exchanging insane blows, making the watchers anxious. Donghyun keeps hitting the same spot and cracks Mun's arm as well. The guy gets completely wrecked by Donghyun. He still doesn't believe he's about to lose against a talentless trash. Mun's prestigious family survived for decades thanks to the techniques passed down through generations. As he was chosen to be the next ruler, he determinedly trained his whole life, but he quickly realized he had nothing special going for him. Mun was also talentless and had nothing to match the family's standards. He became the cause of shame and humiliation for his family, but he remained determined and pushed himself through rigorous training that no normal person would even consider. After working so hard, he thought he could finally lead the family, but one day he learned that working hard was nothing but the bare minimum. His father brought in some kid to replace him as the leader. He was in disbelief, but his father helped him understand that they needed talent to keep the family alive, which he didn't have. The father blamed everything on Mun's past life and ordered him to just piss off while the boy could take over his position. Mun became frustrated and stood against the decision. He worked too hard to change. He begged for another chance, so his father challenged him to defeat the kid if he wanted to keep his precious position and honor. Mun agreed to it, as things were unfair for him. But when he faced the kid, he finally learned that a talentless guy like him was useless. He just couldn't believe it, but he had no other choice but to leave. With the fire of revenge burning in his eyes, Moon became determined to prove that talent could be defeated with nothing but pure hard work. He wanted to prove this to everyone. That's when Moon met Cheonsu, where he faced the second unconquerable obstacle. He challenged the guy to a fight after feeling pissed off. Cheonsu effortlessly wrecked him. He tried to stand his ground against the guy but learned that Cheonsu was another crazy genius. He wondered if this was a sign for him to accept defeat. The guy became frustrated, and in a desperate attempt to win, he rushed towards Cheonsu and tried throwing a kick, but got his ass handed to him by the genius. Cheonsu's face got scratched, which was something rare for him. He praised Moon for his effort. This riled up the guy even more, so he got back on his feet and rushed forward again. He stopped his punch midway after hearing Cheonsu calling him strong. Cheonsu hoped they could be friends and offered a handshake. For the first time ever, Moon heard someone calling his pathetic ass strong. That's how he began working under Cheonsu, and with time and continuous effort, he became even stronger and reached the position he's in right now. Moon thinks the stakes are too high for him to back down now. He keeps exchanging blows with the redhead. As they fight each other, the watchers get concerned, as they believe both guys will come out injured, no matter who steals the win. Junwoo grits his teeth as he feels helpless. Choi frustratingly orders him to pull back Donghyun, as he could get injured again, but Park stops her and believes it's a matter between the two of them, so no one besides them can stop what's happening. She still feels worried, as she thinks the fight has gotten out of hand. Donghyun and Moon keep fighting each other. They both realize the force that's helping them move forward isn't any talent or strength, but pure tenacity and focus. It's the result of whatever they've both gone through in life. Donghyun remains determined to keep standing. As they both go all out and punch each other at the same time, the audience is shocked to see they've both lost control over their bodies. The guys drop to their knees, and the match turns into a double knockout. Cheonsu grabs Moon's weak body and lets him know he was really strong. Park assures Donghyun to leave everything to him. They both get up to put an end to the shit show. The protagonist and the villain of our story finally come face to face with each other. Right off the bat, Cheonsu orders our protagonist to kneel down just like he did 2 years ago if he wants any mercy. The goons laugh, while Choi feels disrespected. Cheonsu doesn't understand a few things. He points out that Park has finally gotten his hands on some money and even made friends, so why is he still so obsessed with Nexus? Cheonsu wonders if Park thinks of himself as some protagonist who needs to constantly chase more. Junwoo feels angry as he remembers what happened clearly. Nexus made him go through extreme pain and suffering, the hatred, and the injuries that took time to heal. Seeing Park's terrifying expression, Cheonsu assumes it's their way of letting the frustration out. The protagonist calls him correct, and charges forward to land an attack. Cheonsu calls him a musclehead, and as the fight begins, the goons get excited, witnessing the final battle. Cheonsu dodges the punch and flips backward to kick Park. He sees a kick coming his way but easily dodges it with his fast reflexes. Cheonsu's glasses believe no one can match his speed. Park believes it's not only speed but that Cheonsu is hiding something more terrifying. The protagonist receives a punch, but Cheonsu doesn't stop and keeps delivering more blows. Choi finds it hard to believe someone can overpower Park. Junwoo grits his teeth in frustration as well. Earlier, when he was trying to come up with a counter against Cheonsu, everyone told him the same thing. They revealed that Cheonsu fights as if he knows what the next move will be, but it's nothing like a prediction. It's like he can see into the future. Junwoo called it bullshit and believed they were overhyping the guy, but now that he's witnessing it himself, he's starting to believe Cheonsu might actually have foresight. As the protagonist keeps getting punched, Junwoo is unable to find any other explanation since fighting against Park is no joke. Cheonsu pushes Park backward and admits he's skilled, but Cheonsu lets him know his strength and adaptability alone are never going to help him win this battle, because Cheonsu reveals he's able to see through everything about the protagonist. Somewhere else, Lion Kim picks up a call and someone asks about the situation. The guy already knows things are going horribly, while a mysterious woman believes he has a habit of making things hard instead of sticking to proper progress. Another unknown man asks about Cheonsu. Lion replies he's still not finished but assures the guy Cheonsu is a great partner, so he deserves a second chance to prove that he's valuable. The protagonist faces the final villain. It starts to rain, but he continues to fight. As he's about to land his punch, Cheonsu calls it a readable move and easily dodges. He reveals he's able to see through any opponent and kicks Park away. The protagonist falls to his knees and barely dodges the attacks coming his way. Cheonsu stomps his face and sends him backward while remaining unscathed. Cheonsu reminds him he's nothing special, even though the people around him praise the guy a lot. He makes it clear to Park that he's just a nobody. Donghyun knows he's in no position after he almost lost, but he doesn't want the protagonist to lose as everything is on his shoulders right now. Park suddenly screams and shocks the goons. He removes his jacket and finally gets serious just to humble Cheonsu. The Nexus leader feels a different vibe coming from him. The protagonist charges at him and throws a punch, but Cheonsu dodges it effortlessly and calls himself wrong, as Park's movements are still readable. Cheonsu sees a left punch coming, so he gets prepared to counter it and lets the protagonist know his efforts won't change anything. Park screams again and breaks Cheonsu's guard. He hits the guy in the stomach and finally deals some damage. The tides finally shift as Cheonsu starts getting cornered by Park. He's still able to read Park but doesn't understand what's stopping him from countering. Cheonsu learns the protagonist was holding back all along as he's unable to handle things anymore. Choi feels shocked and wonders what's happening. Junwoo explains Park was just holding back so his opponent doesn't die, but it feels like he has stopped caring about it anymore. The protagonist's father was a gym owner. He used to get requests from trainers to enroll his son, but he always rejected them. One day, a guy asked what the reason was behind stopping Park from training. His father lived his whole life doing martial arts and would get stuck in weird situations quite often that would push him to fight someone. Sometimes, he would lose his patience and start seeing hundreds of possibilities to destroy his opponent and wreck their lives. But that's the reason he decided never to have his son train anything, because the father knew Park was a special kid born with insane strength. Even a small mistake would send him straight to a lifetime in jail. Choi is shocked to learn Park was hiding this much power, but she doesn't understand how he managed to reach this level without real training. Junwoo smiles and explains that despite not going through any real training, Park has gotten stronger through real combat. He's a literal beast with insane adaptability. As the protagonist faces Cheonsu, he hits the guy with his knee and wrecks his face. Cheonsu is sent backward, and as he notices his head spilling blood, his eyes widen in excitement. With a cold expression, the protagonist challenges him to read his moves now. Not just in games, even in real life, Cheonsu was easily able to dominate anyone in a fight because he could just easily read his opponent's moves. Everyone began following Cheonsu, so he rolled with it since it was a satisfying feeling. Despite being such a genius, even he couldn't outsmart money and power. He knew the harsh reality but didn't feel any hatred toward people with real power. He just felt extreme jealousy and wanted to someday achieve what they had. One day, he found the perfect opportunity and created his gang to climb his way up the ranks. He didn't feel any guilt or regrets as he thought the world was already full of people chasing the power he envied. Whatever he had to do, his goal was to just attain money and become even stronger than the people he was jealous of. He worked tirelessly, and little by little, he was finally getting closer to his goal. But now, all of a sudden, he's seeing Park's punch coming at him. The guy doesn't understand why he feels so excited about a crappy fight. Cheonsu feels alive for the first time. Junwoo notices his laughter and becomes confused. For the first time in his life, Cheonsu wants to demolish someone without caring about money or power. He maliciously laughs, and despite his plans getting destroyed, he feels good for some reason. Cheonsu doesn't understand this new feeling. His goons notice his behavior has changed as well. Their leader charges forward himself this time and attacks Park with a kick. His followers feel relieved to see he's actually making the first moves now. Cheonsu begins seeing things more clearly. He's even able to find the protagonist's weak spots. Cheonsu hits Park hard and continues throwing more attacks. His goons start believing they're about to actually win, but Moon orders them to be patient. Someone like Cheonsu going all out means Park holds the strength to push him so hard. Moon thinks they're both evenly matched, and even a small mistake will turn the fight upside down. Cheonsu keeps exchanging blows with the protagonist. The fight grows more and more intense, and as he gets hit in the face, Cheonsu admits Park is a beast, even though he's readable. He begins feeling an insane thrill and feels alive, which gives him a solid reason to go all out against Park. Cheonsu and Park throw punches at each other and try their absolute best to come out victorious. It becomes an insane battle of brutes determined to win. They both hit each other in the face but remain standing and continue their battle. Out of nowhere, someone orders them to stop. Junwoo gets annoyed and wonders who he is. Lion Kim lets Park know it's already over. Cheonsu orders him to back off, saying he hasn't achieved victory yet, but the guy calls him wrong and believes he already lost the war as soon as he got reduced to such a pathetic level. He needs to stop now. Park wonders who he is. With a terrifying expression, he orders the man to just back off. But Cheonsu removes Park's hand and despite feeling frustrated announces the gang has been cancelled, shocking everyone, including Park. Junwoo doesn't accept such a half-assed outcome. He's still not satisfied, goes against the decision, and frustratingly screams, but Lion laughs it off. He helps Junwoo understand he already got what he wanted since the gang has been destroyed like he desired. Lion believes this should be enough to satisfy him, which makes Junwoo speechless. The goons can't believe they're being disbanded while Cheonsu requests Lion to give him another chance. The guy orders him to just do whatever he can after this, and maybe he might become worthy of a chance. Cheonsu helplessly stands in front of everyone and admits he got carried away just now. He's still determined to make a name for himself, so he decides to take a step back and gets on his knees. He's confident this development will only help him progress further one day, so he accepts he lost, shocking the protagonist and his friends. Junu orders him to get up, slaps the pathetic leader, and calls everything bullshit. Junu's unable to control his frustration as the guy made them look like nobodies. He orders Cheonsu to get up, saying he should be groveling in front of them, not some trash who came in between. Despite receiving a beating, Cheonsu doesn't get up, making the others feel even worse. Just like that, as if they became fools because of their rage, Nexus and the pathetic leader disappeared completely, but they were all aware the war wasn't over yet. All the efforts, the Pascal scheme, and Lion's intervention meant Nexus was just a toy of some bigger power. Junu has no proof of their identities but believes they haven't achieved victory yet. The war has just started. Junu assures them he will soon find the ones behind the scenes. But after all of this, they had no other choice but to go back to their old school lives. The peaceful days made it look like the battle they had never actually happened. Soon a whole month passed by. One day, at the convenience store, a little girl asks the worker if he's going to propose finally. He asks her to mind her own business. Out of nowhere, Choi enters the store, so the little girl wishes him the best and disappears. The awkward guy sees Choi and starts making weird faces. He tries to control himself, but his heart begins beating harder. The guy calms himself down as he has been preparing for this moment for a long time now. He sees her coming every day, so the stupid lover assumes she's trying to make a move. He scans her things and decides to make his move as well. He gathers courage and lets her take a gimbap with her food for free. Choi wonders what's wrong with him. The guy regrets how he phrased things despite practicing so hard. Choi thanks him with a beautiful smile, which blows away all of his worries. He realizes this is love but ends up getting the wrong idea. Choi feels confused, and all of a sudden, Incheon appears on their bikes. The gorilla enters the store and reminds Choi they don't have time for stupid activities. She calls him crazy and becomes annoyed, questioning how they found her location. The anxious store worker observes their argument and gets angry seeing the musclehead talking to his beloved like that. He assumes his lover is stuck in some kind of weird situation. The gorilla eats the gimbap and orders her to hurry up. Poor lover sees his precious gift getting eaten by someone else. The fatty leaves the store after giving Choi a warning. She feels irritated and asks the lover boy if there's any back door for her escape. He gets the wrong idea about the whole situation and quickly points toward the back door that will lead her outside. She shows her gratitude but wonders why he's acting this way. Choi escapes through the back door. The weirdo puts up a break sign and goes outside to confront the gorilla. He reveals his amazing sleeper build and orders Banjung to spit out the gimbap he gave to his precious lady, or else he'll throw hands. At a barbecue restaurant, Insu gets informed that Choi got kidnapped again, but Banjung takes responsibility for it. The guy gets too carried away while roasting his food and completely ignores his goon's information. Outside the store, the fatty tries punching the lover boy, but the powerful punch doesn't even faze the guy. He kicks Fatty and destroys him with just a single attack. The weirdo finally understands why poets call love crazy. The gorilla falls down and wonders who he's facing. He guesses the weirdo is one of those tigers who disappeared after Nexus got wrecked. Since Nexus is already finished, many fighters are appearing out of nowhere with the determination to steal Cheonsu's empty throne. Strong fighters who were laying low, and many new gangs are showing their faces now. They are called secondary shocks. Dongyun appears and slaps the weirdo while frustratingly questioning about Choi. The lover boy assumes he's the boss, so he grits his teeth in anger and orders them to leave his precious princess alone. Banjung warns Donghyun about the guy's strong kicks. The redhead attacks, but lover boy throws the same kick to block. They both take a step back, and Donghyun remembers he learned many new fighters were coming out. He still wonders how he didn't notice such a strong guy before this. He guesses the guy isn't a student. Loverboy takes a fighting stance and expresses he's surprised someone in Korea can keep up with him. He throws a punch, but the redhead dodges it. Donghyun admits he's strong, and as he begins getting cornered, the redhead hits Loverboy's knee to push him back. They both stop holding back, and as they begin exchanging blows, Choi appears and yells at them to stop. Once the misunderstanding gets cleared, the weirdo bows down in front of everyone and gives a genuine apology. Choi feels annoyed as he could have just asked her instead of replying with fists. She doesn't blame him much and begins yelling at the fatty who caused the whole misunderstanding. Banjung tries acting innocent, but she blames it all on his scary face and believes anyone would get the wrong idea. The weirdo keeps apologizing, and as they all leave, he begins crying his heart out as he's not sure when he'll meet his precious princess again. The guy admits he loves everything about her. The next day, Junu enters Park's class and, with a wicked smile, he shares he has finally located the real villains behind the curtain. So Park has a lot of work to do. The protagonist gets up with a serious expression and wonders who they are. At Junu's building, as the whole gang finally gets together, he shares that he has finally identified the people backing up Nexus. He believes they're behind all the crimes Nexus has committed so far. Park learns Cheonsu was nothing more than a pawn, so he decides to defeat the leaders first since he wants to teach Cheonsu a lesson. Junu understands him but reveals they can't win without money. and the ones behind Cheon-soo are the fourth-generation heirs of the Seongsan group. This shocks the gang. He reveals Lion is the second eldest son, and behind him is the eldest, Dong-ho Lee. Choi recognizes the name and remembers they're so rich they can most probably buy the whole planet in a few years. She doesn't understand what they aim to get from a shitty gang like Nexus. Junwoo remains confused as well, and since the ones they're fighting against are no joke, he knows it won't be an easy win. So, Junwoo warns everyone to get ready for what's coming. Somewhere else, Dong-ho Lee announces they're going to conquer the entirety of Korea. He clarifies what he means and shares his desire to become the most supreme and incomparable, just like their parents. He doesn't want anyone to stand in their way and leave everyone behind in terms of money and power. The guy expresses how disappointed he is after his brother finally got the chance to prove himself, but he ruined it and became a joke instead. He apologizes for his brother, but the blondie laughs at Lion and can't believe he's so different, even though they belong to the same family. Lion becomes frustrated hearing them laugh, but the blondie calls him inexperienced and believes he's not ready to play the dominating role. The guy expresses he's disappointed to see how careless Lion is with the country's public. With a cocky attitude, he decides to take care of the guy's mess, but the woman laughs and doubts he'll achieve anything different. She decides to deal with it and assures Dong-ho she already has the perfect plan. Dong-ho calls it laughable as it almost looks like they already knew Nexus would fall. They both try brushing it off with a smile, but Dong-ho forgets about this, as he knew he would someday have to set the pecking order within their gang. The blondie wonders if he's trying to have a four-sided battle. Dong-ho calls him correct, and announces that whoever wins gets to lead the generation in terms of both money and power. The blondie feels amazed to see his confidence, while the woman calls it a good opportunity, so Dong-ho announces the beginning of their game. At the detention center, Gyubin Yang finally gets permission to leave. The other prisoners are shocked to learn this. They begin chattering about how unfair things are. A prisoner grabs Gyubin's attention to say his goodbyes, while another one mocks the guy and believes he'll be back in a few days. Gyubin's eyes burn with rage. He grabs the prisoner and lets him know he doesn't care if the guy rots in here forever. He's never coming back because he has power backing him up. He slams the prisoner on the metal wires and destroys his face with no effort. The others gaze at his strength and hope they get to see him outside someday. Gyubin finally leaves the crappy prison and smells the air of freedom. A mysterious woman with tattoos all over her body orders him to hurry up as his employer is waiting. The blonde woman, Seong Ah-lim, greets him with a cute smile. He hops inside her car and learns she wants him to form a gang in Nexus's place. He doesn't understand why she wants him to defeat Park first, even though he has no real gang behind him. She explains some kids are talking about the secondary shocks that are appearing after the gang got destroyed. New fighters and gangs have already started fighting for the throne, so it's completely stupid and tiring to face them all one by one. She questions how someone can achieve their goal as fast as they can. Gyubin finally understands that since Park is the one behind Nexus's downfall, once everyone knows he got wrecked by someone else, the other gangs will calm down by themselves. She calls him correct and orders him to just jump in and destroy the guy without worrying about what happens afterward. Gyubin takes her orders but shares he wants to deal with something else first. As the sun's about to set, the noise of fighting begins coming out of a house. Someone calls it stupid to fight over money and kicks open the door to go make some money himself. He suddenly sees Gyubin standing in front of him. The baldy greets his old friend, so the guy becomes teary and hugs Gyubin while questioning how he got released so quickly. They both go somewhere else, and Gyubin wonders why he hasn't escaped his shitty house yet. He assumes his friend is having a hard time leaving his ungrateful family. The guy tries making excuses, but Gyubin thinks it's obvious from his expressions, so he throws the bag down and gives huge stacks of cash to his friend. Gyubin reveals he's involved in a big deal and assures his friend they can enjoy their lives once he wraps it up. He gives all the cash to his old homie and orders him to leave his shitty place as he doesn't need such horrible parents. Gyubin calls the guy his brother and assures him to calm down. A few years ago, Gyubin teamed up with his friend and stole someone's bag. They both tried hiding, but Gyubin's friend Donghua fell down. He remained calm and told Gyubin to just continue running, but the man chasing them finally caught up and dragged Donghua to an alley. The little kid tried making shitty excuses, but the frustrated guy didn't let it slide and tried beating the crap out of Donghua so he would spit out his friend's location. But the kid didn't reveal anything. Gyubin kept watching helplessly as he couldn't do anything about it. The next day, Baldy cried and blamed everything on him. He became determined to protect his brother no matter what. Donghua assured him it wasn't his fault alone, as they both knew this could have happened, but he agreed that they were both brothers from that day on. That's how the two kids became family. At Junwoo's office, the guy explains there might be more enemies besides Dong-ho Lee. He calls them literal rats since they keep multiplying. Junwoo wonders why Park looks so down. The protagonist mentions his fight against Cheon-soo last month and asks Junwoo if he believes Park would have won. Junwoo is certain Park would have won the fight like he always does, but the protagonist says it was the first fight that made him doubt his victory. The protagonist doesn't believe it will go in his favor again if Cheonsu comes back stronger. Junu's surprised Park's confidence dropped so hard, but he calls the guy right and believes they should do their best to stay prepared, so they'll need new plans that will make their victory absolute. Somewhere else, Cheonsu meets up with Lion and asks for an honest answer. If the fight kept on going, he asks Lion if he would have stolen the victory or not. Lion doesn't give a proper answer, as he's not experienced in gang fights, but he makes things clear that the next time Cheonsu needs to win no matter what. The villain becomes determined and takes Lion's words seriously. Donghua rushes towards a few goons running for their lives. They feel terrified and wonder why he's back even though their leader got sent to juvenile. Suddenly, one of the goons gets sent flying. The other ones almost piss their pants as they recognize Gyubin is back. He gets surrounded by the two friends. Gyubin hopes the guy had fun mocking him while he was at the juvenile. The baldy repeats his words and scares the guy. Poor dude falls down on his knees and tries making shitty excuses to save his life. Gyubin throws a brick towards him and orders the pathetic guy to use it to prove he feels sorry, so he doesn't need to hide all his life like a little rat. The pathetic victim is left with no choice, so he picks up the brick and uses it to smash his own fingers to prove his loyalty. Afterwards, as the guy walks back with his friend, Seong-ai appears and mentions the message she sent about avoiding any other jobs. She questions if it's too hard for him to understand Korean, but he explains he was just dealing with personal matters, that's all. The guy demands more money since he wants to pay his homie's debts, and since he's extremely poor, a single bag full of stacks wasn't enough. She insults him and throws a few more bags filled with cash. The woman gives her word that he doesn't need to worry about money, but from here on, he can't take any actions unless she orders him. And if he continues doing sideline jobs, she's not going to show him any kind of mercy. Gyubin takes her up on the offer and smiles wickedly. At Junu's office, he explains what's been happening in Seoul. One news is from Myeongdong. The area is usually very noisy and crowded, but these days there are no activities happening. He talks about Gangseo District next, and reveals the schools that were attacking each other have suddenly joined forces. They're now known as the League. Junu wonders why the public is having such different reactions seeing two unbeatable beasts arriving out of nowhere. Choi checks the reports and notices the same lover boy she met a few days ago is behind it. She takes charge of Gangseo District as she is sure she has met the guy before. At the convenience store, the weirdo still continues to regret what happened that day. Ever since he fought with Donghyun, his princess stopped visiting the store for ramyun. He accepts a guy like him might not keep her happy, but he still finds it hard to give up on her. The guy suddenly hears someone entering the store. His expression changes instantly as he sees his princess approaching him. She calls him Jonghyun Cheon, a 19-year-old who came back to Korea after Nexus was finished, and within days, he destroyed the schools nearby. With a serious expression, she questions if she got something wrong. Jonghyun swears he didn't do anything. He explains he got dragged into weird situations and feels horrible hearing his precious girl accusing him so casually. Choi gets confused, and as she tries to talk, someone throws a huge air cooler inside. The leader of Gangseo League pulls up outside to take revenge for the men Jonghyun beat up. He orders the weirdo to come out. Choi almost gets hit, but her lover boy saves her, and feels disappointed he couldn't show Choi his real side. But he gets ready to deal with the men all by himself, so he lets Choi pick her ramyun and enjoy. She becomes worried and offers help, but Jonghyun assures her not to worry, as he's going to destroy them within minutes. As the fight against Gangseo League begins, Jonghyun destroys the leader, and despite getting hit by a bat, he remains unscathed. The beast defeats all the men within 3 minutes, so he proudly asks his precious girl if she's done cooking. Choi feels anxious. They both sit down to clear all the misunderstandings, so the guy begins explaining and tries keeping it short. He calls himself an innocent student, which is hard for Choi to believe, but he continues and explains he was in Thailand before. But after he moved here, the information about him spread instantly, and he began getting bullied for being new. He was hoping to not stand out much, but the guys kept bullying him, so he ended up losing his patience and destroyed them. He mentions he learned Muay Thai from his dad's employee, who was a trainer, but despite winning against them, he frustratingly tells her his life became worse. He kept getting dragged into violence, and it didn't take long for word to spread everywhere. So students from other schools began popping out to challenge him, and the gangs even started giving him stupid nicknames. The guy feels mad about it but shares the rumors about him kept on spreading, so now students from other towns are ganging up on him too. He calls Gangseo one of them. Choi listens to everything but calls it bullshit. He tries to convince his princess that he's innocent but gets cut off by men suddenly bowing down in front of him. Jonghyun gets annoyed and calls the men weirdos, as they were trying to kill him just a second ago. Gangseo's men speak up and share they just wish to follow someone who's strong, so they all want him to be their captain. The lover boy wonders how they can call someone sir while they look 49 themselves. The man tells him age doesn't matter. They all wish to follow him because he's stronger, so they request him to become the leader. Jonghyun gets mad at them for pushing such weird expectations every second, but this makes Choi laugh out loud. She calls him a weirdo but assures him she believes in what he said earlier. Since he's not some thug on the streets but knows how to move, Choi smiles and asks him to join her team. She hands over her phone and mentions her boss is a literal cash cow. Jonghyun takes the wrong idea, so he gets on his knees and shows his gratitude while politely taking her phone. The guy promises he's going to do his best just for her. Gangseo's men get confused at first, but they all get on their knees in front of Choi to follow their boss. Choi accidentally becomes the lady boss of their league. Outside the gym, a kid thanks Park's father for the training. He promises to do his best, and as he leaves in a taxi, Park's father gets a bit surprised as he notices his son standing behind him. He realizes there's something wrong with Park. The protagonist requests his father to help him get stronger. The guy becomes serious but knows this day was inevitable. Outside his school, the redhead contemplates his previous battles. Despite giving his all, the best he could manage was just a draw. Even against Jonghyun, he doubts he would have won the fight. He feels extremely frustrated and blames himself, but Choi surprises him from behind and, with a cheeky smile, tells him to calm down. Jonghyun greets him as well. Donghyun gets shocked as he recognizes the guy, but Choi quickly fills him in on the situation and laughs as she tells him the weirdo is under her now. Jonghyun calls her correct and promises he's ready to do anything for his precious princess. Donghyun calls him mentally unstable, but Choi thinks that makes him better for the job. The lover boy properly apologizes for what happened the other day, but Donghyun assures him it's alright. The weirdo excitingly points out that Donghyun is definitely not a normal fighter, so he's curious about what training the redhead went through. Donghyun shares that he hasn't done any real training in his life, which is a bit surprising for Jonghyun. He admits Donghyun's kicks felt raw, but the strength he was putting behind them was insane. He believes only a few real fighters he has faced made him feel that strong sensation. He calls Donghyun a genius, but the guy feels disappointed and wishes Jonghyun was right. The weirdo says it's hard to deal with the frustration when your strong will is not enough to smash through the limits, but happily suggests Donghyun join him and meet someone who can help. After school, Jonghyun calls them lucky as his dad's friend is still working, and he's coincidentally in Korea right now too. He calls it fate. Choi learns her dad has a mango importing business. She assumes they're already rich, so she doesn't understand why he was working as a cashier. He believes these are his dad's efforts, so he wants to achieve something himself later. Donghyun suddenly notices a man examining his legs. The weirdo recognizes it's his master, Taesik Cha. The old man begins crying after he finds out the redhead has such amazing quads. He believes the kid went through harsh training, so he can't help himself but cry. The weirdo excitingly agrees with his master. Taesik assures the redhead he already knows about the whole situation and asks if he wants to get stronger. Donghyun replies positively, so the teacher promises he's going to reach new heights after training under him. The old man feels motivated, so he moves his hand forward and asks Donghyun if he's ready. The redhead knows his teacher will have to go through real trouble dealing with him, but if he doesn't mind the burden, Donghyun bows his head and requests the old man's guidance and training. Taesik smiles and calls it perfect. At Park's father's gym, the protagonist continues training tirelessly and destroys another punching bag. His dad reminds him that he's really powerful even right now, so he wants to confirm if Park is sure about training. The protagonist tells his father it's really important, so the dad decides to roll with it since he trusts his son. But before they start, he asks Park to promise two things. Under normal circumstances, even if he feels enraged, his father wants him to avoid fighting if his opponent has no spirit to continue. Otherwise, he's not a real fighter. His dad explains the second thing. Martial arts is just a collection of techniques that help someone maximize their power so they can win efficiently. When these techniques are properly analyzed, some moves seem to be more useful, so they become classics and are added to martial arts. So, being a martial arts student means Park is going to gain all the experience and wisdom of the human race, and he needs to use it logically. That's what it means to be an honorable fighter. His father hits the punching bag and with a serious face, asks his friend to promise he'll follow these rules. The protagonist gives him his word. Inside a mysterious dark building, Gyubin checks the reports and guesses it's in his destiny to cross paths with Insunam once again. The next day, Gyubin meets up with Seong-A and shares he's thinking about starting with Insu. She calls the guy dumb and reminds him she wanted him to defeat the protagonist first, but he thinks they're going to defeat Insu either way, so it doesn't matter who he starts with. He also mentions he needs to settle a few personal scores as well. The woman decides to let him do whatever and thinks this can be a test to see if he's capable of defeating Park. He calls Insu just a warm-up, but thanks the woman for her permission. He decides to pay her favor with a quick victory. After a few hours, Gyubin informs his goons they'll start by destroying Inshin first. The goons are shocked they're getting paid so much just for some weaklings. A man hears everything, so he quickly disappears and informs Geo Park that his competitor's men are about to chase down Incheon first. He's surprised but admits Seong-ah is good at taking the first step. He orders his man to keep him updated and reveals the news to his goons. He orders them to crash in right now if they care about the medal. All 3 of Geo's goons are professional athletes. Incheon's men suddenly get stopped. The goons ask who's there, and one of them gets shocked as he notices Gyubin and his lackeys. The Baldy feels glad to see his old pals, but without wasting a second, he throws them off their bikes and destroys them instantly. He orders his men to charge in, so they all wage war against Incheon and use weapons to defeat the gang. Banjung fights a few men while asking about Insu. He orders Incheon's men to call the leader ASAP. Gyubin feels nostalgic, but his friend believes there's a reason behind his choice. He doubts Gyubin would take such a long detour for just a warm-up, so Donghua expresses his curiosity. The Baldy helps him recall the time he was in big trouble after having an accident. Incheon's the gang he was hiding behind, and Nam's gang became a safe place for him. Nam was kind enough to let Gyubin stay with them, even though Insu was hesitant and cautious about it. Gyubin felt weird at first, but learned Nam's gang was loyal and reliable. They had fights from time to time as they were living together, but time would always fix everything. He was finally inside a gang that would fight back to back, and during the war for Incheon City, Gyubin stood beside Nam and fought with everything he had. Donghua listens to the story, so Gyubin continues and shares he assumed they were all loyal people at some point. But despite calling them his family, he got betrayed, and they threw him out like he was some useless trash. He hates them more than his enemies, and tells Donghua the only guy he trusts and calls family is him. Insu rushes toward his gang on a motorbike to save his men. Gyubin was like family to the gang, but one day Insu realized their stash of money was missing. Another gang member couldn't believe it, but Insu confirmed it was gone. The other guy mentioned that only Gyubin was present the previous day, so their attention turned to the Baldy, who became anxious. Insu asked if he saw someone grab the money since they'd been saving it for a while to change their house in the future. Gyubin got angry, feeling like he was being blamed for it, but Insu assured him that's not what he meant. A gang member came forward and blamed it all on the Baldy. He told everyone he saw the guy going through their stuff yesterday. Gyubin grabbed him, and with rage in his eyes, he told the guy to cut the bullshit because he would never fall so low, even for a street goon. But the man kept blaming him and even called the Baldy a snake. He made it clear to Gyubin that he was no family, just a street thug to them. The Baldy lost his patience and wrecked the guy with his punch. He challenged the crappy scumbag to repeat his words and kept beating him to a pulp. Gyubin lost control and smashed a table onto him without hesitation. The others tried stopping him, but he kept pushing forward to let out his anger. Suddenly Nam entered the house and saw his goon in a pathetic state. He learned what happened, but despite Gyubin's excuses, Nam slapped the guy. Gyubin tried his best to convince him, but Nam pushed him back and told him he doubted Gyubin would do such a thing. He made it clear many times to treat each other like brothers, as they were a big family. Nam called him out for his shitty behavior and decided it was time for Gyubin to just leave. The Baldy became speechless for a second, but stood up to leave. His whole life was complete trash, but when he thought he had finally hit rock bottom, he got proven wrong once again. He wished them good luck and left. In the present, Incheon starts getting cornered. Banjung hopes their leader finally arrives, or else they're all done. Suddenly everyone hears the bike rev as Insu makes a grand entry and wrecks a goon with his bike. He apologizes for appearing so late, while the gorilla motivates everyone to hang in there, as they can finally win. Insu greets his old homie, but Gyubin calls it stupid since they were never this close. Insu admits the Baldy was framed. Just a few hours after Gyubin left, they found out the guy he destroyed was the real thief. But even though they wanted to apologize, Gyubin was already out of their reach, so the misunderstanding was never solved. Insu apologizes for what happened and hopes Gyubin can forgive him, but the guy laughs and calls the apology stupid after they threw him out like garbage. Gyubin doesn't let it slide, so he charges toward Insu to attack, but the guy dodges and hits him back, as he has no intention of losing so easily. Gyubin gets pushed back while Insu lets him know his brother didn't kick him out for some cash. It was because Gyubin crossed the line and destroyed his brother without mercy. Gyubin calls it bullshit, and as he got thrown out like garbage, he moves forward to attack. Insu throws a punch, but Gyubin grabs his arms with metal wires to stop him. Behind some sketchy alley, Geo admits Seong-ah is a dangerous woman. His man wonders if they're aiming to destroy Park today. Geo smiles at how daring he is, but that's the reason he trusts his men. He calls him correct but shares that today isn't the right time. He explains the real fight is happening within their group, and once the game is over, only one of them will come out victorious. That's why he wants to start by destroying the weaker ones, like Seong-ah Lim first. His lackey finds the plan perfect, as it will be beneficial later. Geo calls him correct, and they both begin moving with their plans. The gang continues to fight with determination to not back down. Gyubin uses a glove and the metal wire to pull Insu toward him. He lands a powerful punch that sends the guy flying. Insu tries to attack as well, but the wire ends up ruining his movements, so he's unable to land any punches. The metal wire cuts deep into his skin whenever he tries to move. He gets completely wrapped in it, but Insu decides to sacrifice getting wounded and pulls Gyubin in himself. The Baldy manages to dodge, smiles wickedly, and lets Insu know such crappy moves won't work against him. He reveals he grabbed the lefty because it's obvious he can't do much with his right hand. Gyubin uses this opportunity and lands the critical hit, but Insu realizes his opponent is just throwing random attacks since he's tied up. Insu uses this to pull Gyubin toward him again, as he wants to turn the tide for good. He uses all his strength to attack, but the Baldy slides down and pulls him so hard that the guy screams in pain. Gyubin recalls hearing them boast about friendship and standing up for each other. He doubts Insu can do all that when he can't even protect himself. Baldy frustratingly insults the guy and reminds him not to spit out bullshit he doesn't even mean. He continues wrecking the guy and lets out all the anger he had for so many years. Baldy always used to hate the word family, because to him, family were just people who would make his life worse just for looking them in the eyes. People who betrayed him, and people who would celebrate if he ever died. He would always see happy families on TV, but that made him feel shittier about his situation. Incheon wasn't anything different either, pitying him for his situation, acting like they actually cared. He used to hate them for their crap, but the worst thing was, Nam began giving him this false hope that was terrifying to him. He ended up getting used to it, but in the end, he got wrecked again, and whatever he was expecting actually happened. Gyubin's eyes were burning with revenge. He wanted to destroy Incheon, and whatever happened was enough to crush the little bit of hope he had left. Gyubin confronted his father afterward and tried to kill the shitty guy. In the present, Insu destroys his eyes with a headbutt. He apologizes again but lets Gyubin know he has crossed the boundaries and tried hurting Insu's family. For that, he's not going to back down. Insu wrecks the guy with a powerful punch. Gyubin goes flying away after such a hit. He realizes he played right into Insu's hands and ended up getting closer. He admits he's going to lose if this keeps going, so the Baldy tries maintaining his distance again. But Insu doesn't let him go so easily. He grabs the guy and hits him with an elbow attack, completely destroying his head. Insu continues to hit him, but Gyubin finally frees himself and gets back his distance. Insu pulls him back once more and lands another crazy punch. Gyubin wonders if the guy trained while he was gone, as he doesn't understand how Insu's gotten so much stronger. As he's getting his ass whooped, the Baldy tries remaining calm. He pulls himself back together and puts everything on the line since he never wants to lose against someone who betrayed him. Gyubin tries pinning Insu down. He grabs the guy and jumps off the edge so they both die. Insu manages to grab an edge. He keeps holding onto the metal wire so his old homie doesn't die. Gyubin frustratingly orders him to just let go, but Insu tells him to shut up as he's about to drop dead if he ends up falling down. Gyubin ignores his words as he doesn't mind dying, then getting saved by him, but Insu yells at him to cut his bullshit, which makes the guy go silent. Insu knows he's angry, but he orders the guy to just chill out for a second, or else he won't get the opportunity to continue his stupid fights if he ends up dead. Gyubin still talks back but instantly stops as he notices blood dripping down. Insu tries his best but the string breaks apart, so the guy drops into the sea. Gyubin feels satisfied with his life and guesses this type of death was just inevitable. As the guy slowly sinks in, Insu jumps in without hesitation, surprising the selfish scumbag. They both finally make it out to the shore alive. Insu feels glad his old homie is alive, but out of nowhere, Gyubin gets stunned as he sees his friend knocking Insu out with a bat. Donghua praises him for the efforts but reveals he already knew the Baldy would chicken out. Gio and his men appear as well. Gyubin realizes his friend betrayed him. The guy calls Baldy an unreliable wimp. He guesses Gyubin wasn't so useless in the end, so he thanks Baldy for giving him such an opportunity. Gyubin screams in frustration as it is hard to believe his own brother would betray him. He tries assuming the guy is doing this against his will, but his trash friend calls him stupid and makes it clear that he just wants money. Gyubin questions his situation at first, but begins laughing and calls Donghua out for his greedy behavior. The rat becomes silent hearing his words, but he loses control and wrecks his friend's face with the bat. The Baldy loses consciousness and falls down. Donghua calls him a wuss and believes he got what he deserved for keeping his hope about family alive. The next day, the secretary runs towards Seong-a's room and informs her they played right into Gio's hands. The boss already knows all of it. She admits she made a mistake since this much was expected from her competitor. She feels a bit frustrated but then points toward her fish tank and tells her secretary she never feeds any of them, but they still haven't starved to death. She reveals that despite having the same breed, they're not friends, but only victims and predators. She calls humans similar and believes they're playing the same game. At night, Gio celebrates the victory with some fancy dinner at a bar. He orders his men to stop hesitating, but Donghua reminds him they still need to deal with the protagonist and gather a whole gang for whatever he's aiming to do. Gio gets a bit surprised as he wasn't expecting his goon to be so passionate about their goal. He smiles and explains they really do need to deal with Park as fast as possible, but there's no way to defeat the monster without dealing with Junwoo first. Donghwa feels confused, so the guy helps him understand. The protagonist gets to do whatever he wants without getting in trouble for it, because whenever he's done with his business, a lawyer comes in and cleans all the mess because of Junwoo's backing. So without his backing, Park will be nothing more than a wounded lion in the wild. Donghwa guesses Junwoo isn't someone to joke about. The guy calls him correct but guarantees he'll take care of Junwoo himself. Gio admits Junwoo joined in with such aggressiveness, and it didn't take time for him to become a huge pain, but he doubts a wobbling baby can escape his traps. He's confident that once he starts going all out, Junwoo's career will end. Somewhere else, Junwoo reaches a building in a hurry and gets informed all the distributors are canceling the deals for some reason, which means their company's value won't hold up for much longer. Junwoo questions the reasoning behind this, but the informant shares he's still unsure as the distributors are just throwing shitty excuses. He guesses someone's pulling the strings to take revenge against Junwoo. The guy anxiously shares they need to pay 50 billion won tomorrow. He asks for a decision as they don't have any time to spare. Junwoo realizes they're starting with him first. He orders his men to check if banks can assist with the payment, but his secretary disappointingly informs that's not possible either, as the banks are refusing for some unknown reason. Junwoo admits he shouldn't have let his guard down. He tries remaining calm and thinks hard to somehow find a solution. Seong-ae appears out of nowhere and mocks him for calling himself a businessman since he doesn't even have 50 billion in cash. She greets the guy and lets him know she has the money he needs. Somewhere else, Gio believes his enemy is probably stressing about the closed distribution lines, as he was already empty after the expansion efforts. He thinks Junwoo has been defeated, so he lets his men deal with Park. The goons get ready to follow his orders, but Gio suddenly receives a video of him abusing a woman. The guy feels frustrated, but as he checks the sender, Gio grits his teeth with anger after learning it was sent by Seong-ah. He wastes no time and quickly calls the woman. She reveals she sent it through a trap phone, but finding the video that could tame him wasn't easy. She mentions more of his crimes and wonders why he's living such a shitty life. The cheeky girl threatens him with more videos and says she has a few journalist friends who might find these videos useful. He gets angry but controls himself and asks what she wants from him. The woman smiles and asks for a meetup. At night, Gio pulls up to the construction site and aggressively questions if Seong-ah is in the mood to fight him. He repeats his harsh words and reminds her that he knows some dark secrets himself, but the woman keeps smiling and believes he deserved it for getting in her way. She feels pity for him as the guy he brought with her might scare him. Junwoo comes out of the dark with an evil expression. Shio wonders why he's here. The guy assumes they're trying to flex their friendship, but Junwoo assures him that's not the case. He reveals Gio got called so he could propose an idea. Junwoo believes they're on the same boat, so they should chill out, as they both know someone might get away while they're busy fighting each other. Gio understands he's talking about Dong-ho Lee, so he lets Junwoo talk. The guy suggests they should just be straightforward so no one needs to deal with any humiliation. Junwoo thinks an all-out war with fists and only fists is a great idea, but the loser has to admit defeat and leave the game. Gio sees through his cheap tricks and questions if Junwoo holds no confidence in anything besides violence, but the guy calls him wrong and confidently lets him know he's sure about power, money, or whatever else. Junwoo mocks the guy and uses his words to make him angrier. Gio ends up going along with it out of rage, so Junwoo announces they'll fight in 3 days and lets the guy bring whoever he wants. Gio grits his teeth, but Junwoo takes his anger and frustration as a yes and smiles wickedly. At his office, Seong-ae wonders if he's confident about his victory, as the guy he's about to face is trying to build an army of his own. She reminds him he's going to lose whatever he has if he ends up failing. He knows it already, and believes the guy will just try achieving victory using his powerful goons. But he's confident the numbers are useless unless they can all fight on the same level as Cheonsu against a monster like the protagonist. Choi appears in a rush and informs Junwoo she can't get in touch with Park. Junwoo gets shocked but remembers Park shared his desire to get stronger a few days ago. He decides to go look for the guy personally and believes they can locate Park, as he has 3 days to prepare. Choi anxiously questions what he plans to do if Park remains out of reach. Junwoo calls it a stupid question, as he has already decided to fight. Dongyeon feels hesitant about it, as he doesn't want them to win, but Junwoo doubts he can hold the goons off all by himself since Park and Insu are out of reach. The redhead smiles and reminds him they have another guy for this job. Junwoo gets confused, but Choi realizes what he means. She pulls up with Dongyeon at the convenience store and requests the lover boy to join the fight. The weirdo agrees without wasting a second. Inside a locker room, Gio's man gathers the Korean athletes and reminds them that they're able to experience such great things thanks to the sponsorship SKS Entertainment provides. The stadiums and the education they're getting for free are all thanks to the company, but they need to make an effort for once. He calls them lucky as they're getting the chance to prove their worth in front of someone who's spending so much money on them. Donghua gathers his goons and believes that despite being in a desperate, shitty situation, they're all unstoppable. He announces that at the stadium, they're finally going to show everyone their true worth. Both leaders order the goons to follow their orders. At the hospital, Gyubin finally wakes up but gets surprised by Insu. The guy smiles and shares that he's just here to check on his pathetic state. Gyubin gets angry but suddenly remembers how hard Insu tried to save him from drowning. He becomes silent and asks the guy to just leave. Insu confirms he's about to but suddenly stops and invites the baldy for a beer later. He shares that the gang is doing better than before. The goons are working hard learning trades and completing their part-time jobs. Insu mentions they even have a house bigger than the one he saw before, and there's an empty room left as well. Insu invites him for the beer again and hopes he actually pulls up. Gyubin still calls his act bullshit. Junu tries his best to locate Park. He reaches a jungle after learning Park was seen around the jungle at the top of the mountain. The guy barely makes it to the top. He hopes the protagonist has a good excuse ready for what he's putting the guy through. Junu walks forward and hears someone training. He finally finds Park and calls the guy, but our boy keeps on punching the bricks he has gathered. Junu finally catches a breath and reminds Park he has responsibilities to deal with. The protagonist completely ignores his words and uses all his might to throw a crazy punch. His brute strength destroys the bricks into pieces. Junu's left speechless, seeing his beast-like power. Park finally finishes his training. At the stadium, Seong-ae begins doubting Park's going to appear, but Choi informs him Junu was able to locate the guy, so there's a chance he'll make it in time before the shit show ends. The stadium lights suddenly turn on. Choi anxiously smiles as she lays eyes on Gio's huge army of gorillas. Gio confirms he brought the goons he needs, so he wonders why Park's still missing. He feels disappointed to learn he went through so much hassle just to face an apathetic gang. Jonghyun anxiously points out the number of men is a bit more than what he expected, but the redhead orders him to not be so wimpy. Loverboy understands his words but believes the men they're about to face are very dangerous, judging by the looks in their eyes, especially Donghua and the guy in the tracksuit. Donghyun calls it his lucky day, as he's finally getting the chance to test out his strength. He confidently reveals he loves punching bags that actually fight back. Jonghyun smiles and calls the guy a worthy rival. He becomes motivated to challenge the redhead for the love of Choi. They both take a fighting stance and confirm they're ready. Gio believes they're underestimating him. He's curious to see how strong they are, so the guy challenges them to do their best without the protagonist. His goons get ready and charge toward Junu's men with weapons in hand. Donghyun warns the gang as he believes the fight might take the whole night to finish. Someone tries sneaking up on the redhead, but Jonghyun yells at him to duck and uses his kicks to wreck the guy effortlessly. Donghyun and Loverboy begin charging forward, destroying the men with their insane techniques and becoming unstoppable together. Loverboy advises his homie to remain cautious as they're getting attacked from all sides. The redhead assures him he's ready to get wrecked a few times whenever he enters a war. He appreciates the help, but makes it clear that Jonghyun doesn't get to lecture him just for that. The Loverboy smiles and hopes Donghyun takes the next one without complaining. Seong-ae feels disappointed seeing the weak gang Gio gathered. She stops worrying and admits she's impressed, as they can achieve so much even without Park in the picture. Choi reminds her things can change in a second, as the real fight hasn't even started. She points towards the gang leaders as they begin making their moves. Banjung notices Donghua Lee and remembers Insu revealed Gyubin got backstabbed by the guy. Everyone kept believing he was just Gyubin's sidekick, but no one knew Donghua was secretly trying to cook something. Insu heard Gyubin mention that if they both went all out, he was unsure about his victory. The only reason Donghua was trying to avoid standing out was to keep his hands clean. He was aware of Gyubin's gullible personality, so he used the guy like a disposable tool. That's how he achieved so much through Gyubin effortlessly. Insu warned Banjung to be wary of the psychopath who didn't care about anyone but himself. The lover boy suddenly gets kicked in the stomach. He grits his teeth and asks the redhead to cover his own back from here on out. Donghyun lets him deal with his own business as he's busy destroying Donghua himself. He lets out his anger on the rat that betrayed Gyubin without hesitation. He tries landing a kick, but Donghua remains calm and calls the guy stupid for his overconfidence. He grabs a goon and uses him as a meat shield to avoid Donghyun's kick, leaving him speechless. Donghua uses this opportunity to throw a strong blow. The redhead begins bleeding, so it's hard for him to properly see what's happening. He grits his teeth in frustration, but Donghua believes he should spit out such bullshit with people he's close to. He reminds the redhead that he's not in his gang's circle, so if he's here looking for a fair fight, there's no way he's saving himself from this one. A few goons grab Donghyun from behind while Donghua rushes forward to end his life. He destroys the redhead with a heavy blow, while the athlete and his goons confidently believe the fight is already finished since Donghyun is out of the game. He doubts anyone can take the redhead's place. The other athlete laughs and feels disappointed, as they couldn't even get a chance for some warm-up. Jongyun and the redhead fight with whatever they have to hold off the goons, and suddenly, the doors open, catching everyone's attention. The protagonist finally enters the stadium, ready to destroy them all. His fear alone stops the lowly goons from taking a step forward. They think it's like they're facing a wild tiger. Donghua yells at them to stop staring and destroy him, so the men scream and gather all their courage to rush towards Park. A few days ago, Park's father gathered the bricks and explained that Park's punches were like a hammer, and he had been putting strength into them using his body movement and dense muscles so far. But the dad told him he wouldn't be able to win with just those against a worthy opponent. He gave Park an example and then asked how he would go about breaking the wall. The father answered his own question by focusing all his strength on a small point before punching the wall. His punch broke through the wall's back as his strength got carried towards the core with that technique. The father believed he would become unstoppable with this. The protagonist understood everything his dad explained. Back to the present, Park uses the technique he learned to effortlessly destroy multiple goons at once. The athlete calls back all the goons and hits Park with a kick. He doubts the lackeys are even worth a warm-up for the protagonist. Park blocks his kick, but as he tries to attack, the gorilla athlete jumps in and tries pinning him down. The javelin expert jumps in and sends Park flying, but our boy lands on his feet safely and admits the blows are heavy. The athlete calls whatever he's heard about Park complete bullshit. He admits the protagonist may have the upper hand against weak goons, but in front of real athletes who train their bodies for literally everything, a weakling like Park has no chance of winning. The protagonist attacks again, but he's unable to keep up with the athlete's speed. He gets wrecked again, and as the guy's about to end the protagonist for good, Park uses whatever he's learned to throw a heavy punch. Choi gets surprised as she sees him getting overpowered by the athlete despite fighting seriously. The athlete calls him slow again and dodges the attack. He hits Park with his knee and continues destroying him, so our boy dodges the last kick and decides to ignore the rules he learned. He finally lands a terrifying punch, wrecking the athlete's face.